she might.
I hope I don't have
because
to give
she's
the
not
invocation. That'd be
familiar.
the toughest part. I'll just turn to the co-chairman and say,
Dude, God is great. God is good.
well, thanks for the food. Amen, right?
Right over here.
Wow, there's a lot of them today.
No, wait, but that was that's
Oh, I thought
Early.
that they'd have a lot of them closed out before we got here.
some of them I didn't see, but maybe that's because
Well, they gave us
daughter,
that pink list,
They had
but
have
I'm
chick-
waiting to talk
yeah,
to
it's
their
the same
attorney
thing.
So they got
because
rid of
the,
I think
well,
it's the
when you
same
go
as
to
what
the
they
next
said.
page, some of them,
right.
Okay, okay, ironwork compliant.
It's illegal. They have
but I was waiting to ask Pat
Where you
Pratt,
got it.
but he's not gonna be here today.
And when they got rid of the other ones, we just like
City
there's a,
attorney.
there's a chicken web, and it's called chicken like that. And but
I'll
she had
ask
the
her.
first one get away with them.
The secretary, if she'll make a
You should-
copy for you,
Oh,
and then you'll be able to read some of the
So
things
cool.
that's in it.
They kind of destroyed her
Oh,
screen for it.
okay.
They come in and
She
sit
can
up
make,
on
she
some
made a
way
copy for all the board members. I'll ask her if she can make a copy for you.
I don't see my list of
Yeah, because you could read this in your
what
spare
goes first,
time.
what goes
Yeah,
second.
Yeah,
Where's
but if you
everything?
have these-
getting like 20 eggs. So like they'd go down to the veggie
Oh,
stand
yeah.
and take a couple dozen brown eggs and change the eggs and make veggies.
I think I have a copy already
extra copy,
made.
because you made some for the new board, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And she,
How about yourself?
If not, yes, I can, I will.
I know,
I
thank you
do
so much.
too.
All right, how are
Right,
you?
get someplace like
And that
that.
wasn't the sunshine law, that's the code enforcement one.
Most of my pants are elastic waist. And I'm trying to get my hand in my pocket and walk.
I don't have. I'll borrow her. Okay, and I will, if you'll loan it to me, I'll make plenty of copies after the meeting. And I'll get copies, and I hate to waste all that paper.
One of my friends in rescue is a college professor. He said one time she always dresses in the garage because she's got so many buffs and changes in the garage so she doesn't walk out with hair all over.
Fine, it's really a.
Since she got home, she realized she had her pants on inside out.
From one another.
Oh, dear.
And
I
as
did have
more
a shirt on
experience
today.
you have, they speak, they'll,
But I hadn't left the house yet, but you leave and realize that.
yeah, and it should be with that.
Sumi, do we
And I
Barbara's in there.
use the attorney?
support, but it seems Bobby as a new member.
Well, we need more people. We don't.
No, we got two.
It's overwhelming for me, and I'm here on what.
Oh, okay.
But I'll get you the copy. Yes.
Do we have an attorney today?
I don't know, there's been an accident on, Parkland Avenue.
Oh,
So he
yeah.
might be delayed.
Okay.
Sorry, I was about to tell you that. So I do not know if he's gonna be here or not, but he is, my information that I do have, you can
write
read
on
about
it
him.
and
He's our
put your own
procedure
notes on
attorney.
it,
I'll just do
whatever you want to do.
And what if
then
I
you'll
don't
have
want to
it
proceed
forever.
without the attorney?
'Cause like I say, every
Michelle,
case is different.
And she'll tell you from there. I don't know.
Okay, well, because we have a
With the
question
same
from one
type
of
of
our
cases, they're
members
ruled
that
differently on
needs
it.
a legal opinion.
For
So
some reason.
today especially, we need an
Oh, I don't
attorney.
know.
If you wouldn't mind, let's just give it just a few more minutes. He messed up in that accident somewhere, you know, trying to.
Well, yeah, because I got
Did you get a little-
detoured.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It just happens that this time we have a. All right, let me go
Yeah,
talk.
I really do.
Who's
Yeah,
the boss of?
I guess.
no, she's there, sir.
Oh, yeah. Attorney is, I wanted to talk
He
to
said
him.
not to be considered your one you were worried about.
Right, yeah, but I, in case it come up again, I still wanted to,
Maybe they came up with
Well,
You know, I
yeah,
would like to see
because
Donna
I've passed,
when we,
but still,
because now people are signing in. Get that sign and she can go in or because some of these people sit and watch us go, and they're the last person on the agenda,
You know,
and they have to.
it happens with,
all
on the commission, the people at the sit area.
Yeah.
is there a dock there? Some of them have docks. And if you go like to the.
That thing going over.
No,
Oh my,
yeah, I think the people
just be
that
so
own
heartbreaking.
What are
those
those supposed to do?
yeah, own that, yeah.
And then the people around them that got
I-
taken out.
I'd have a hard time, even, 3-4 houses away, just going to bed. Like, oh my God.
That's not always where you want to go.
Right.
Yeah, can you imagine trying to sell a property near that now?
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
they're
It ain't gonna
screwed.
happen.
Yeah,
And that's a nice area. too.
Oh,
yeah,
it
it
looked like
really
it was.
looked like it.
Yeah.
And
The big stuff.
I just think,
Yeah,
sit
yeah,
there and
that's
watch
the
your
city, yeah.
panel
But
fall
I think they were put there by the people who have those
Probably have an east.
right to do that. Isn't that the truth?
Yes, 2-1.
I see they added something else here. The rules and procedures. See, they, this here, I mean, you need this at home to read. You can't participate in the meeting and sit and
Oh,
read
yeah.
and absorb all
They
this
need to
stuff.
wear
It's
that.
not,
Oh yeah, I'd love to see a minute.
I know.
I don't know what I'm standing there for. I guess I'm watching the door like a small child. I'll sit down and watch and worry.
Oh, yeah, because she doesn't have the name. I would like to have this to read at home. Well, I know where. Why the attorney? We might not have an attorney today. They said there's a bad accident on top of that.
Hope not either.
Seems like they'd have.
It's probably
I mean,
over there.
okay
You
that
came
they
up nice.
I love it.
Oh, I think it's over that way.
They might not have a phone call, say I'm on my way, but
Well, yeah, cell phone's easy enough. I mean, which they all have. iPhone. Look up the number.
I've got the old little flip phone.
Oh,
Back-
it's smart.
It is,
You're smarter.
you know, I paid $20 every 3 months for 200 minutes, and I usually use 5 minutes. I don't use it at all. And the one that I got 2 times ago, when I went and got my new one, the guy took my old one around, and other employees said,
They're making fun of it.
I was so embarrassed.
Okay. Did they call the
Find out
city
anything?
attorney's office while you were there?
We're gonna at least get a little bit of a start here, and then we'll have to hold off.
Is that the attorney?
I would
Pardon
read
me?
the invocation.
No,
Oh.
not that I know of.
Oh, okay.
No, his attorney should be sitting up here, Ms.
Yeah.
Steph. What we're gonna do is, on that particular case you're concerned about, we'll go as far as we can go.
Okay.
And then we'll make sure we get a ruling before I put you in that position.
Okay.
Just don't be concerned. We'll make sure one way or the other we're on good ground before we
Okay,
go any
all
further.
right.
Nothing yet, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question. Okay, wait 1 second.
All right, folks, are we pretty much ready? You haven't seen any indication from the fellow that videotapes things, is he?
He's here.
Okay, is he, all right.
He's hiding.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the time is 2:09 p.m. There's been a bit of a delay in the opening of the Code Enforcement Board meeting for July for the city of Tarpon Springs, and in that, the city attorney unfortunately will not be able to be here today. There has been an attorney sent to serve in his behalf. That person, unfortunately, is tied up in a bit of a traffic accident, which I understand we've had here in Tarpon Springs. So what we're going to do is we'll try to go through some of the preliminaries and try to hold off for at least a little bit of time to see if and when the attorney makes him or herself available. And then I'll have to make a ruling as to whether we're going to proceed or not, and most likely we will proceed. But for right now, the first thing I'd like to do is have a roll call. Will the city clerk please have a roll call? Roll call, please.
Oh, yes, sir. This is fine. Mr. Demasis?
Here.
Mrs. Archer? Here. Ms. Fay Casey?
Here?
Mr. Bergerman?
Here.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Here.
Mrs. Wade?
Here.
Okay.
We're having one of those. That completes your roll call, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to now have a pledge of allegiance. If everybody would stand, the flag is there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. I'd like to go over the hearing procedures for the Code Enforcement Board. It is the intention of the board to promote, protect, and improve the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Tarpon Springs by providing an equitable, effective, and inexpensive method of enforcing various codes within the city of Tarpon Springs. Any aggrieved party may appeal a final administrative order of this board to the Circuit Court. Such appeal shall be filed within 30 days of the execution of the order to be appealed. Florida Statute 286.0105 requires any party appealing a decision of this board to have a record of the proceedings to support such an appeal. The procedure of this board is as follows. First, the city presents its witnesses and exhibits, after which the alleged violator is able to ask the city's witnesses any specific questions regarding their testimony. Secondly, the alleged violator is allowed to make a presentation and present his or her witnesses and exhibits. Then the city can question the alleged violator's witnesses. After both rounds of testimony, both on the part of the city and on the part of the alleged violator, each party is asked to give a closing argument, first by the city and then by the alleged violator. After those three steps are taken, this board will close the public hearing portion of the case to discuss it and take appropriate action. Before we begin the public hearings, we will have all potential witnesses stand up and be sworn in by the secretary of the board. And one other thing, if anybody has a cell phone, if you'd please turn it off or turn it to airplane mode or vibrate. And at this time, anyone who intends on testifying, if you'd please rise so that the city clerk can swear you in.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You can be seated.
Okay, what we're going to do now, the first case listed is 17-800000089. It's 615 East Pine Street. Is there anyone here representing 615 East Pine Street? Okay. There is no one here. We're going to take a 10-minute recess. The time is now 2:10. We'll stand in recess until 2:20 in the hopes that the city attorney will present him or herself so that we have wise counsel throughout the proceeding. We'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you.
Just to remind you, all board members, this stays on. It doesn't turn off.
All right.
second. Supposed to consider the case. But that's kind of tough. So just
Right. And I think that,
and they said normally it takes 3 weeks to make a decision. But by April 1st,
Exactly.
they're gonna do it the following.
no, I heard they were gonna do it today. Yeah. Of course, everything changed. You know, but I don't know why they. Like, before I left, they were at the point where somebody had. You know, he hasn't paid from gold anymore. They have to start on the Las Vegas. Oh, I didn't know.
Oh, I'll let it go.
Yeah, right.
So my question is, how do you pay restitution when you're serving time in jail?
Well, he's got money.
I told you I'd bring one back sooner or later.
Yes.
Let us know.
Did you go out to the playground during this?
You know, they changed it from there. I don't know what they changed. I guess they're trying to put everyone on the same scale.
A partial term counts as the same.
Water park.
Alternate term.
Have you seen that? Our water park? Yeah. That is so cool.
They ended up giving me
And I
all
love that they put it right next to the dog
question.
park.
Okay, it's
Well,
discussion and then a motion, or is it a motion and then discussion?
Want a motion and a second, then discussion.
I was asking
Gotcha.
about. the
All right,
numbers
Juan.
because
Juan, why don't you just move
I
right
heard
over
the
That's,
same
here?
that's what I'm
thing.
saying.
I'm looking at
You
this.
know, I
digging the
write
little chart that
motion,
used to be in there. I took it out because
discussion,
they kept
I have
changing on
motion,
me and
second,
they're
discussion.
confusing people.
And I mean, I like
But,
everything. Cause I
there's
get
a lot of members
tongue-tied.
going out in.
Like I said, my problem is I start reverting
No, we
back
usually
to,
don't have a
you
meeting
know,
in December.
even at
We
this
gotta have
point, I
one.
had like a 3-minute speech that I used to have to give at
I
the
guess
start
the
of
VOC will
hearings
start
out there.
pointing people
And to
or
this
lining
day,
them up.
I can rattle that off and be thinking about making out a list of what I need to go fishing at the same time. But this stuff, I just,
How long were you on it?
23 years,
Wow, I
I
guess.
did over 5,000 cases. So, I mean, it's like embedded.
Yes, because that's one, that was, my understanding, that one made it have any
So,
limits. but now
anyway,
put limits in.
So
No, but I just mean they're changing.
only
up.
only doing this once a
always
month,
good.
I always get it out of
Fresh
order, and
faces
I don't like
and
to
people
embarrass
that,
myself, so
you
a
know,
motion,
you
a
have that
second, and
background,
then
you'll be a
discussion.
Great, you know, asset
is it.
there.
Now I know why I never get it right, because 22 years of doing it a different way. Okay, we're gonna, as soon as the attorney's ready, we'll be ready to go.
And then
I want to
on
put down
the,
the name tag. She is not Mr. Trask.
affidavit,
No.
She's not Mr. Trask.
on the non-compliance, you have to see if anybody's
Right.
here. But on the compliance, you don't.
Good. Folks, our attorney is here, and we'll be ready to go at 2:22, so we got about 3 minutes, and I appreciate everybody's patience. I just wanted to make sure that we had the assistance of the board's attorney. It actually works to the benefit of both sides. all set? I told everybody 2:22, so we're going to wait 2 more minutes. If there's anybody that's not present. 2 minutes.
To get
Get organized.
my head wrapped around it.
Got 2 minutes. That's it.
We already did the pledge, so
We
I
did
got
the
out of the
pledge.
invocation.
We didn't. I'm not religious, so I didn't give an invocation.
Okay.
No,
Tom gave me a whole bunch of prayers in case you want to go back and do that. I can. If not,
I don't think we need it. We
right over it.
didn't have it when we started originally.
So then, not necessary.
We swore the witness.
Okay, perfect. Do me?
Tom have an emergency, or he's not feeling well?
No, he has a funeral that he's going to, I believe, today. So he just asked that I
Absolutely.
cover it.
Okay, we'll call the Code Enforcement Board back into session. Again, for the record, I appreciate everybody's patience. I'm sorry for the delay. The attorney has shown up. She was unfortunately caught up in traffic, and we're once again ready to proceed. We called the first case, which is 615 East Pine Street, and the record will reflect that there was no respondent. We'll turn to the inspector, and if you'd reintroduce yourself for the record, you can begin your presentation.
Afternoon, thank you. I'm Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department, Code Enforcement, been so employed for 2 years. The case I bring before you now is case number 17-800000089. The address is 615 East Pine Street. The address owner on record is Elisa Collins. Initially, this case started back in February. I have 4 exhibits for the board. Exhibit number 1 are all my photographs that were taken over a period of time, both at the beginning and then as recently as yesterday. All of my notices are exhibit number 2. Exhibit number 3 includes case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records, and emails between me and the property owner. And then exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign that was posted. And I would appreciate the board notice those and have them entered into evidence as appropriate. Moving forward, as I stated, February 16th of this year was my initial inspection based on a neighbor complaint about overgrown property, trash, and debris.
Do we have copies of the exhibits that
I think
they've
they're
started
circulating
around?
now,
All
sir.
right. I'd like to just point out to the clerk, as these exhibits are passed down to you, if you'd please collect them and make them all a part of the record. Go ahead, officer.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. On February 16th of this year, I found a number of violations on the property. There was a shed which appeared in very poor and dilapidated condition on the west side of the property. One thing that should be noted about this property, it does have a single-family home, and then it has an adjoining lot, which basically would look like 2 lots, but it's been combined into 1 parcel, so it's an extremely large lot. There were piles of wood located against the western fence. The trees were low over the sidewalk. There was debris being stored in the rear of the property. There was 2 vehicles at that time, a white Toyota pickup truck and a scooter, which appeared inoperative. The scooter tags were expired over 2 years ago, and the pickup truck at that time had a left front flat tire. There was also a fence that was in very, very poor condition that separated part of that western, I call it a vacant lot, but it was the lot that didn't have a structure on it. Moving forward, we sent a notice of violation in February. It was sent via first-class mail and certified mail to the registered property owner. February 22nd, we received an email requesting an extension from the owner. We granted that extension and moved it out, I believe, until May or June, June 28th. Around that time, I visited the site and spoke to the son of Lisa Collins. They have a car in the backyard. They had gotten rid of the shed. They tore down the fence, did a large amount of cleanup work on the property. It was a substantial amount. Some of the debris, though, which under our definition of debris is old equipment, using utility trailers for storage. And then there's another car that was discovered that I originally couldn't see. Now that they cleaned the fence up, it's under a tarp in the backyard, and they're attempting to get rid of it, as they say, but they apparently can't find anybody able to take the whole car. So they're having to get rid of it piece by piece since February. So basically what's left at that point in time was the car under the tarp. There's a topper in the front yard, And then there's just a lot of debris that was kind of moved back, looked like old construction equipment, bricks, cinder blocks, things like that, behind a new fence that was installed properly, which I can't see through. As you can see in the latter pictures that were included in exhibit number 1, you can see those items behind the fence that are still clearly visible from the right-of-way. So moving forward, the notice of hearing was sent out because on June 28th, I conducted that reinspection and they still were not in compliance. So on July 5th of this year, the notice of hearing was mailed first class and certified mail. We posted the property on July 10th by Officer Roki because I was unavailable at the time. And as I stated, there were numerous emails between the owner. She was well aware. I even had a phone conversation with her a few days ago and advised her what was left. And, you know, she basically said she still needed some more time. I re-inspected the property on July 19th, and it was still not in compliance. All of the notices that were sent to the listed property owner and the address via the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector's database. And at this point, what I still show them in violation of is City Ordinance 8-22, which is the accumulation of trash, City Ordinance 8-40, which is the duty to maintain private property to be free of nuisance conditions. Those nuisance conditions fall under 852, which is the storage of debris and some landscaping issues. And then the last code is 40.00, which is having an inoperable, unregistered vehicle on your property, residential property. Those are the violations at this time that I bring before the board.
Do any of the board members have any questions for Officer Gaston?
Does the owner live there?
Yes.
But you're dealing with a son or both, or?
Yeah, I emailed her back and forth. She's out of town at the moment and that's why she's not here. She's out of town. I had talked to the son, as I stated a couple of months ago. When I talked to the mother, Lisa, apparently son didn't bother to pass anything on to her. So everything's been via notice or emails. She's well aware of everything. And like I said, she did get a significant amount of work done, but there's still a significant amount of work left.
I believe there's another
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
Officer Gadsden, the lady asked for more time. Did you allot it more time for her with the work that she has done?
We gave her 4 months, originally from February to June, and then now we're here on July 20th. So she's had over 5 months over 5 months. So, and then initially she asked for a little bit more time, and I told her that I would present that to the board. She didn't define how much a little more time is, and I have my opinions about what a little more time is. But does that answer your question, I hope? I don't have much more to offer you, Ms.
But
Dowd.
not exactly, because it still doesn't tell me how much more time did you give her. Apparently, she's probably having some difficulties. I'm not sure.
I mean, it's only an opinion, and I've seen property like this cleaned up in a weekend, and I've seen it never cleaned up.
Right.
It's really relative to your motivation.
Okay.
Does anyone have any further questions for Officer Gaston?
Pardon?
No? Would anybody like to make a motion on this case?
I will.
Go ahead, please.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violations, City Code 8-22, 8-40, 8-52, and 40.00 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondent was in violation thereof.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Does anybody have any comment they'd like to, any of the board members have any comment to make? Apparently there's no discussion. We'll call for a vote.
Ms. Wade?
Aye. Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Dabbs?
No.
Okay. Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Ms. Vacasie?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. DeMoss?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay,
I'll go on. Okay. I move that the respondent shall have until the 3rd of August, 2017 to bring the property into compliance with code sections 8-22, 8-40, 8-52, and 40.00, or suffer a fine of $50 per day for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of said code section.
Second.
Okay, before we have a vote, I would ask the city inspector, any comment or suggestion on your part before we consider this motion?
I was gonna suggest 30 days, but I'm not in argument at all with August 3rd. I think that the amount of time is appropriate, and I feel that that's a fair decision on the board's part, and $50 a day is reasonable based on the circumstances.
All right, then we'll ask the clerk for roll call, please.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Pardon? Well, was anybody else care to make a comment? Apparently not. I guess we can go with the vote then.
Okay. Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
No.
No? Correct, thank you. Okay. Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Ms. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demasis?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, that brings us to case 17-800000234. It's 418 South Levis. Anybody here for 418 South Levis? Apparently, no one here. Turn to the city inspector again. Officer Gasson, if you're
Thank
ready
you.
with your presentation.
Officer Gaston, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department. This is case 17-800000234. The address is 418 South Levis. It's owned and occupied by an Emma Scott Murray, the property owner of record. The violation code I'm bringing before the board is City Code 40.00 for inoperable, unlicensed vehicles. There's some exhibits going around. Exhibit number 1 are all the photographs to include the initial inspection and the sign posting. Exhibit number 2 are all the notices, the notice of violation, the final notice of violation, and a notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3 are the administrative documents, case summary, property appraiser, tax collector records, and any emails that may have occurred. Exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. And Mr. Chairman, once those exhibits make around, I'd like to request they be entered for the record, please.
Okay, and I would ask the clerk, as the exhibits are passed down, if you would collect them and make them all a part of the record. You may proceed, Mr. Gass.
This case started on April 11th of this year. My initial inspection was a blue Saturn in the driveway. It had flat tires. The car appears inoperable, and the car had been the subject of previous code complaints. I left a door hanger and made contact with the owner, asking him to have the car either made legal or remove it within 10 days. Her response was not to take care of it, but she was going to drive around the neighborhood and find other violations. So on April 22nd, I conducted a reinspection. The vehicle is still there. At that point in time, we sent a notice of violation via registered and certified mail. And on May 9th, I conducted a reinspection. Due to the timing, we sent her another final notice of violation via certified mail, return receipt. We did get a green card back for return receipt from the registered, or from the letters we sent to the property owner. On May 24th, we did get a notice of violation. The certified envelope was returned unopened. On May 26th, a letter from the owner requesting a 2-week extension. Originally, we were going to put this on the June 29th code board, but we had a clerical error, so it didn't happen, so she got her extension as she requested. On May 27th, I conducted a reinspection, but as stated, we extended it already by nature of the fact of not going to code board. On June 28th was my next inspection, almost a month later. There's still no change. The car's still there with flat tires in the driveway. At that point in time, on July 6th, we sent a notice of hearing, first class certified mail. On July 10th, we posted the property. Again, this was posted by Officer Roki. And on July 19th, I conducted another inspection, included the final photograph, which showed that the vehicle still has flat tires and is inoperable. As we stated, we had brief contact, other than the first contact I had, and other than a request for an extension. I've had no contact after that, as far as the vehicle goes. Should be noted for the record, though, that all the notices were sent to the listed owner via the Pinellas County and Property Appraiser and Tax Collectors database. At this point in time, I'd like to have the board find in violation of City Ordinance 40.00 for inoperable vehicle.
Do any of the board members have any questions for Officer Gasson? Go ahead.
Why was that the only violation cited?
What, for the vehicle? Because at that point in time, I didn't have any other violations to cite.
I think she's probably talking about the mess on the carport.
It's a mess.
Oh, well, that comes and goes at that property. That stuff out front comes and goes at that property. So I'll notice them and it disappears and it reappears and it disappears. It's like a revolving door. So I haven't drilled down a way to deal directly with it in its permanency. So there's a couple of pictures that may show none of it being there.
But just to clarify, the car has been consistently,
The car's been there for
Present
quite a
and-
while.
For a long
Yes, yes.
all right? Anyone else have any questions? If there's no further questions, can we get a motion?
I'd be glad to. I move based on testimony, evidence, and facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violation, section 40.00 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was enforced in effect. The respondent was in violation thereof.
All right, any second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions or discussions? Apparently, there's no need for discussion in this case. We'll be ready to take a roll call vote. The clerk would proceed with the roll call vote.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Ms. V. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
And Mr. Moses.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, before we go to the penalty phase, I would ask the code enforcement officer, Officer Gasson, any suggestions or recommendations in this particular case?
The prior case that I referred to was in 2015. It was January 2015. It was the same vehicle. So we've dealt with this vehicle being on the property for over 2 years. And they were noticed previously. What they ended up doing previously is they aired the tires up. They turned the car around so I couldn't see the license plate. So obviously I can't prod up on their property to see the license plate. So again, with the flat tires, I would request the board 2 weeks, $50 a day, if that's reasonable.
All right, anyone care to make a motion?
I can do that.
All right, we'll accept it. Go ahead.
I move that the respondent shall have until August 3rd to bring the property into compliance with code section 40.00 or suffer a fine of $50 per day for each day thereafter the respondent remain in violation of the said code.
Any second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any need for discussion? Anybody have any comments in regards to this?
I would just like to say, I would like to even be less, except I know that noticing, because that makes me mad.
I didn't hear you.
No, I know we have to do 2 weeks, but this is, it's been ongoing, and he tries to work with her, and it's like, it's not that hard to come into compliance.
Found out I don't have to.
Well, I think though some of that 2 weeks is
Just
most
to
likely
noti-
due to how long it takes to get the
Notification.
paperwork.
Well, and I don't know if I can discuss it. I asked Bobby about this previously. That was our sidebar discussion. And Mr. Trask had stated previously that they're noticed of the hearing. They had every opportunity to show up. If the board chooses to say tomorrow, it's their choice. So that's what I was asking her about noticing, and the noticing doesn't matter, just for the board's
Well,
information.
we have a motion and a second. So let's call for I'm gonna call for a vote.
Ms. Wade?
Yes?
Ms.
I'm
Dabbs?
sorry, wait a minute. Ms. Archer,
I'd
you
love to ask,
you
Officer
wanna,
Gasson
go
a
ahead.
question. Could that vehicle be towed if it doesn't come into compliance?
Absolutely. Anything can be towed.
You can't walk behind a car and look at the license plate, but you can go in the yard and tow the car out.
I can't tow it.
I mean, but you could.
We would
order it
have to
then?
do an abatement to tow it.
I got it.
All right, let's,
So,
those questions haven't been asked and answered. Let's go back to this vote. And we started with a roll call vote. Let's complete that.
Okay. That was yes from Mrs. Dabbs, very good. Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. Vacacy,
yes.
Mrs. Archer,
Yes.
Mr. Demosas.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. That brings us to the third case on our docket, 601 East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. It's case number 17-800000291. Anyone here for 601 East Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive? Apparently not. Okay, we'll turn to you, Officer Gasson, if you're ready to present the city's position.
Yes, sir, thank you. Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department. Case before you is 17-800000291. The address is 601 East Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. The property owner listed as Deanna Ruth Gorman. Case I bring before the board is in violation of City Code 8-22, 8-52, and 40.00 inoperable vehicles. There's a number of exhibits. Exhibit number 1 are all the photographs I've taken over a course of time, including I'm sorry.
Can you go over the alleged
Oh,
violations?
sorry. The inoperable vehicle is off of the, we're only doing 822 and 852, my apologies.
Okay.
That's why I questioned you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, sorry about that. I was looking
Alright.
at the different sheet. Exhibit number 1 are all the photographs, including the initial inspection, the re-inspection, sign posting, and the final inspection. Exhibit number 2 are all the notices, including the notice of violation and the notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3 are the administrative docs, case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. And then exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign posted. And Mr. Chairman, once those make their way for the record, I'd like them to be entered as evidence.
All right. I'll again point out to the clerk, if you would gather the exhibits as they come to you and make them all a part of the record.
Yes, sir.
Moving forward, my initial inspection was conducted on May 20th of this year. There was trash and debris on the property, including furniture, parts of a fence, wood, tires, etc. I sent a notice of violation via first-class mail and certified mail on June 5th. On June 14th, the certified envelope was returned and marked refused. On June 27th, I conducted a re-inspection, and some of the trash was cleaned up, and some of the old equipment is still on the property, and trash is still on the north side of the house. On June 28th of this year, the notice of hearing was mailed first-class certified mail, and on July 10th, it was posted again by Officer Roki because I was unavailable. On July 19th, I conducted a final inspection yesterday. There was still some debris and old equipment on the property. There's a golf cart on the east side of the property, utility trailers, and we've had absolutely no contact from the owner whatsoever or anybody representing the property. It should be noted that all of my notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Tax Collector and Property Appraiser's database. And at this point in time, I'd like the board to consider violation of 8-22, which is the accumulation of trash, and then 852, which is the nuisance prohibitions, which deals with debris, which is primarily that old equipment and stuff. The last pictures are probably the most demonstrative, and unfortunately, they're the most fuzzy. So I apologize for my photography skills, but the north side of the house, which is off of Diston, a lot of the stuff was just basically moved to the north side of the house, and tarps were put over it. That's the primary amount of debris that I'm talking about. On the east side of the house, and I don't have a very good picture of it, but I kind of moved the golf cart behind a little section of fence, but it's still clearly visible from the roadway. Basically, all of those items need to be cleaned up for them to be in compliance. So I asked the board to find them in violation of 822 and 852.
Okay, does anybody on the board have any questions for Officer Gass?
They live on the property?
Oh.
They live there?
I'm sorry.
Does the people live there?
It's an occupied dwelling, yes. I don't know if the owner lives there, but it
Okay.
is an occupied dwelling.
Was this a complaint?
I believe so.
I have a question. I'm not familiar with the area. Do they have neighbors close by, or is this?
Yeah, this is the corner of Martin Luther King and Diston, where the flashing light is on MLK. It'd be the northeast corner. He runs a car wash business, kind of, sort of, out of that property, if you guys have ever seen that.
Oh.
So you know which property I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so he does have- there are neighbors
Before us a
involved.
couple years ago. I think it was because he didn't
Um,
have a permit to do his car wash.
That would be true.
Officer, is the front of the house on Martin Luther King or distant?
Yes, the majority, like the driveway is on the distant side, but the front of the house faces Martin Luther King, and it's just past the intersection towards US 19
Okay,
on the north side of the road.
okay.
Does anyone have any further questions? Is there any motion? Anybody care to make a motion in this case?
I'll make a motion.
All right.
I move
Sarger?
based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented in the law that the time of the alleged violations, sections 8-22 and 8-52 of the Code of Ordinance of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondent was in violation thereof.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
You know, he hasn't even come close to seeing this yet. Maybe you ought to at least let him look at the picture.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that it was so slow being passed around. I apologize. I'm sure that that will influence the board members' decision.
And I didn't hear what the motion.
Oh,
That he was.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I was thinking there was going to be numbers and stuff. Okay.
How long has this been going on?
Okay, Carl.
All right. Mr. Bergeron has acknowledged that has seen the exhibits. And again, we had a motion, we had a second. And we hesitated before we called for a roll call vote, but I guess we can proceed. The clerk would proceed with the roll call vote.
Ms. Wade,
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. V. Casey,
Yes.
Mrs. Archer,
Yes.
Mr. Demasis.
Yes. Okay, before we go to the penalty phase, this case having been proven, I would ask the city inspector any comment or suggested penalty in regards to this particular situation.
The only thing I'd like the board to consider, I'll let the board make the decision on the time and the fine. There was a prior case for violation 840, which is duty maintenance of private property, and it was similar circumstances while I was the inspector. They primarily cleared most of the property up, and it was not in bad shape, but that occurred in 2015, June 27th of 2015. So we carry forward about 2 years to this case, which is basically the same problem, a little more of an issue, and now we're still not in compliance at that point. So it's the only thing I'd like the board to consider, but otherwise, I'll leave the time frame and the fine up to the board.
Okay. Does anybody care to make a motion?
Go for it.
I'll move that the respondent shall have until August 10th to bring the property into compliance with code section 8-22 and 8-52, or suffer a fine of $50 per day for each day thereafter. The respondent remain in violation of said code section.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? Anybody care to make any comment or have anything that they'd like to discuss in regards to this case?
I just want to clarify something. When you presented the case, you said the last name was Gorman. It appears to be Gorham. Is that correct?
Gorham, so
Yeah.
Gorham.
Gorham.
Okay.
I kind of didn't pronounce the H.
Just clarifying for the record.
All right, well, that's good. Any other discussion?
I don't know if this is the right time or after, but I want to ask this before the case goes completely away. Why isn't this being to establish if you were there 2 years ago?
You guys just did establish it.
Just now?
As soon as this board finds it in violation,
I
they're
thought-
established for the next 5 years.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay, thanks.
welcome.
All right. Are we ready for a vote? We can have a vote, please. Roll call.
Ms. Wade,
Yes?
Ms. Dabbs,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. Vaquesi? Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demasis?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to our next case, case number 4 on today's docket, 17-800000298. It's 318 East Boyer. Okay, is there anyone here? Yes. If you gentlemen would please step over to the podium, give us your names, and also, we're going to hand you the exhibits that will be made a part of the record, and we would ask you to take a look at them and tell us if you have any objection to having those entered into the record as exhibits.
Sure. Ramin Asif with Infinity Realty Investments, property manager.
And Lucas Heath.
And again, you're with?
I'm within the property. I'm on
Our
site
maintenance guy.
Your EM Real Estate Development?
I am the property manager for EM Real Estate. It's a company out of California.
And the gentleman,
Is our maintenance guy.
pardon me?
Our maintenance guy that works for my company.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And he also a new tenant on the property that we're here to discuss as of last week. He moved in there full-time to keep up with everything that we need to do.
Okay, take a look at those exhibits and let us know if you have any objection with those exhibits being entered as part of the record.
Reviewed.
No problem?
No problem.
No, okay, they're acceptable. All right. I would turn to the city inspector then, if you're ready, Mr. Gasson, or Officer Gasson. I should
Thank you,
say.
Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. This case is 17-800000298. The address listed is 318 East Boyer. It's also known as 322 South Gross Avenue due to some interesting addressing within the city. The property is owned by a real estate company, as stated, out of California. It's an LLC. The case before the board is for one violation, which is 3603 fences, walls, and hedges. I'll get to the end, and apparently this has been fixed, but I haven't had an opportunity to inspect it yet. But moving forward with the case, exhibit number 1 is all the photographs that I've taken, including the initial inspection, sign posting, and the final inspection. Exhibit number 2 are all the notices, the notice of violation and the notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3 are the administrative documents, case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector printouts. And exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign that was posted. The initial case started May 20th of this year, stemming from a complaint about trash on the property, trash cans in public view, and a fence in poor condition. On May 22nd, notice of violation was mailed first-class certified mail to the owner and the registered agent. June 2nd of this year, the notice of violation certified green card was signed for and returned. I conducted a reinspection on June 3rd, found the fence still hadn't been repaired, the trash cans are still in public view inside the fence. At that point in time, we sent a notice of hearing. On June 6th of this year, obtained a phone call from Rami. Is that
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Rami asking to be contacted and be added as the local agent and local contact for the property. And they've been in contact quite a bit with the property and attempting to help us out with it. When I re-inspected it on June 28th, the fence was still in poor condition. There were still trash cans loaded with trash overflowing in the public view. At that point in time, we were sending it to the code board. On July 5th, the notice of hearing was mailed first-class certified mail. On July 10th, the sign was posted by Officer Roki. And then on yesterday, the property was still not in compliance. But the only thing that was an issue yesterday was the fence. The trash cans in public view, upon my reinspection, were taken care of, so I put them in compliance. And then the trash on the property seemed to have been cleaned up. I met with the gentleman before the hearing. They have some pictures showing that they repaired the fence. I just haven't had an opportunity to go out and inspect it. But I just wanted to bring that before the board. As I stated, I've had contact, not necessarily with the owner, but the local representatives of the property. This is the same property that was brought before the board a couple of months ago regarding numerous shootings. This is another duplex around the corner from it. These guys are doing their best to try to keep it in line, but they might be able to add some more information as far as that goes. So at this point, I'd just like to, for the record, that all the notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collectors Database, and Mr. Rami is the registered agent. And I would simply bring before the board the violation of 36.03 because as I stated at the time of my last inspection, it still was not in compliance, and I haven't had an opportunity to confirm that it has been fixed.
Well, let me ask you something before we decide that we either have to go on with this case. Would it do any good if we took a short recess and you were able to examine the photographs that these gentlemen are purported to have and make some type of a determination based on what you see in the photograph?
I've seen them, and they appear to be the same area based on the photographs. The only thing that I can't necessarily question is the date. I mean, but realistically, I believe they're reasonable facsimile of the way it looks now. But typically, I'm supposed to see them, and I'm supposed to inspect it myself for it to be in compliance. So,
Well, would it do us any good to hold this case?
What, can we just give them 2 weeks and it'll just kind of be a moot point?
We could handle it that way if what I was hoping was that the officer would we'd hold the case for next month and determine in the meantime you'd have an opportunity to go out and inspect it. Perhaps the case would rectify itself.
And for a point of clarification, if you do choose to just hear it, make a motion and give them 2 weeks, then you find them in violation of this. So there could be other ramifications in the future should there be additional violation.
Well,
so just to keep
the
in
point
mind.
I'd like to make as chairman is that it's very possible that they're in compliance at this time.
if
Is
it might
is that at least a
satisfy,
possibility?
yeah, but also to satisfy you, Mr. Chairman, is I would have, if it had been compliance, I'd be bringing it before you to be established. So if the fence had been fixed, say, last week, I still would have brought this case to be established for any future violations of that fence. So we're still basically establishing it, even if we move forward as it is.
All right. Okay, does anybody have any further questions or excuse me, I'm going to ask the gentleman at the podium. Do you have any questions for Officer Gaston?
Not at this time.
Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions for Officer Gaston? Okay. Any, I'm not sure which of you gentlemen would care to do it, but if you'd like to present your response to the charges, you may proceed.
Sure. I would just like the board to know that the property was sold out to this new company only about 4 months ago. And unfortunately, we had inherited, and I'm going to say this straight out loud, we had inherited a lot of issues with that property, with some of the tenants and how they do things on the property. Me, as the property manager that was hired to manage, we had tried for the past couple of months to get some people out of there, clean it up the way that we need to clean it up and make it presentable for the city of Tarpon Springs and for us as a management company and for the new owner. It's been very, very challenging. We had posted our own notices there. We had talked to everybody in person. We had tried to accomplish the relationship to get everybody to comply, including the fact that we had hired somebody to completely clean out the trash on daily basis from there. And I think that's probably the last call he received. He was not doing a very good job for us, and he ended up getting terminated. The new agreement that we had with the property owner, that we had our own maintenance guy move into one of the units on the property that was taking place last week. We will be completely re-innovating that property as well to make it up to date, to make it look good for the city and for us. However, we are dealing with some dangerous challenges with evictions. We were targeted, both of us. Guns had been pointed out at us at the property, which was not nice. So we found out, we have children, we had to do it, behind the scenes a little bit. We had hired a processor, and we are in the process of evicting 3 of the units. That's been constant issue in there. It might not happen overnight. They might contest it. We have Officer Steve help with a prior case that we're using that to force the eviction. It's going to be a little bloody eviction, unfortunately, with the way that they're not cooperating with us for anything that we have tried to do for the last 2 months. We will keep the garbage out of there on a daily basis. We will renovate that fence. We will renovate the rest of the property once we get the bad apples out of there. We need you guys' support. We need the police department support. And he's been great communicating with me how to get it in front of a judge to order them to evict away from us doing it face to face. So
would your?
I will need a little bit more time than 2 weeks to go get those guys out of there because obviously, the company just started yesterday doing the eviction. We had to post different notices than what we posted last week with the processing company that we hired, name and address, not the property owner or the management company name and address for our protection. And the paper is being served actually with a police officer as of tomorrow morning. So I don't anticipate it taking more than 3-4 weeks to get them out of there, and then we'll start completely turning that property around more and more, like we have been trying for the past couple months.
Okay, well, right now, the situation is it's the fence.
It's the fence. He's referring to the previous case that was before the board and evicting those tenants, so.
Strictly referring to the fence, which is in question in this particular case.
Sure.
How long do you estimate it would take you to have the fence fixed?
The problem of it is that yesterday I went to go get permission from the people that live there. They literally came out with a gun at my head and told me to get off the property.
Okay.
I can't fix the fence.
I understand.
Unfortunately, the two of the guys that we going after to trying to evict, the house right next door where that fence joined is their grandfather property. And the reason they live there is the protection of the family around. And this is what just happened to him yesterday.
Okay, the only other question I would ask is in your opinion, do you feel that if we gave you 4 weeks, you'd be able to have this eviction made so that you could immediately get the fence?
Absolutely. And we can keep you guys informed with all the process as we go as well.
Officer, you have any questions?
No, just so you guys know, if you're trying to go on the property and do any work, call us ahead of time. We'll be more than happy to send some people with guns there to make sure that guns don't get pointed at you.
I mean, unfortunately, it's happened quite a few times for the past couple of months to the point that I don't show up in the property anymore.
You
because
need
I'm
to just
scared
ask
of
us
them.
to stand by with you and we'll go with you. We have no problem with
Absolutely.
Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions for the purported violators? Any questions from any of the board members?
Well, I guess I have one. I thought we heard earlier that you said the fence was fixed. So there are several sections?
It is the adjoining fence. The problem that we're having, I don't know if it's our fence or if it's the other person's fence, the grandfather's fence. But regardless, it's the fence that separates his property from
The
our
southern
property.
chain link fence in the picture was what I had.
Yes, correct.
Not the front one that they hit with the car a couple of weeks
Yeah,
ago.
we haven't encountered the
No,
one with
yeah,
the bullet holes.
Okay.
it is the Jason Wood fence. Like if you're on Boyer Street where the two apartments are, the back side of that fence is pretty much almost laying on the ground.
Well, I didn't know that up until this
Okay.
point.
I understand.
And we had them hitting out the front fence that we
Might
fixed.
want a couple of weeks to deal with that.
Yes, we fixed the front fence 2 times
I've
because they
already-
drove over it. And
Yeah.
it was fixed 2 times within 10 days period.
And then just with the shooting last week, they shot the fence up. I got pictures of the bullet holes going through the poles and blowing the fence down. I mean, I've already repaired it 3 times. Can't repair the backside because the guy told me if I step foot on his property, I'm gonna get my head blown off.
All right.
Well, I don't know what to do.
Well, we don't want you to get killed over a fence.
Okay, we obviously, at least in my experience, 4 years on the board, this is a unique situation.
Really?
I would ask, does anybody care to make a motion in regards to this case?
I'd be happy.
Go ahead then,
I
please.
move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violation, 36.03, did I say of section? Okay, of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondents were in violation thereof.
Any second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, apparently no need to discuss. We'll go right to a vote. If the
Ms.
clerk would
Wade?
please.
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergerman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaquesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer? Yes. Mr. Moses?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to the potential penalty phase, and I would ask Officer Gasson any recommendation in regards to the kind of unique case that we're dealing with here.
I think based on the circumstances that they brought up, giving them 30 days, because it sounds like they're going to take care of the other sections of fence, and they probably need a police escort to do it. And they're dealing with the eviction in a reasonable time 21 days is pretty much reasonable to do an eviction. So if they want to process that as well, they should be able to get that done within a month. And then I would go with $50 a day as a fine after that.
Okay, so you feel that, at least in your opinion, 30 days would be sufficient for the eviction and the repairs? Subsequent repairs.
I know you can do an eviction in 30 days.
All right.
So.
Okay. I move,
Anybody care to make a motion?
I move that the respondent shall have until the 24th day of August 2017 to bring the property under compliance with code section 36.03 or suffer a fine of $50 per day for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of said code section.
Any second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any need to discuss this? Okay. Apparently, there's no discussion. I would ask the clerk for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Ms. V. Casey? Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demasis?
Yes. All right. And I would just point out to the two gentlemen at the podium that please take the advice of the officer. If there's a need, don't put yourself in any type of jeopardy as
Well,
far as
I
your
live-
safety, so.
I live there. I live on the property, so
Well-
that with my daughter who's disabled and my wife, that's not. Even with police escort, it's until we get those people out. I can't risk my life and my wife and my daughter's.
I don't think anybody, either in the city of Tarpon Spring or with the police officer, or anybody that has heard has been in the room would want you to do that. So you just take it easy, and I would imagine that if you need more time, please work with Officer Gaston. He's very reasonable.
He's awesome.
And
Yeah.
I believe that both the property managers and the city of Tarpon Springs and the police department all have the same goal in this
Yes.
particular case. So
Absolutely.
please work together and don't hesitate to utilize the police department. The very best of luck to you.
Sure. The one thing I probably will need to meet with you at some point is we try to get a container delivered to the property instead of having those individual
Understand.
can backups. We can't find a place to put it.
We'll
So
discuss that
We'll
later.
discuss that.
Let's do this. If you would allow me to go on to the next case, and if you gentlemen need to discuss things, you can make.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give Officer Gaston a call about your questions later. Okay. Case number 5 on the docket has been complied with. Case number 6 is listed as not to be considered. That brings us to case number 7, which is 17-8000318. It's 417 Lincoln Avenue. Anyone here for 417 Lincoln Avenue? Okay,
Mr. Quarterman. sir.
very good. All right, Mr. Quarterman, if you'd please, and take your time, but if you'd go up to the podium. Okay, Mr. Quarterman, you've had an opportunity to look at the exhibits?
Yes, I've looked at the exhibits.
Any objection with those exhibits being made a part of the record, sir?
None.
None. All right, then. And once those exhibits are passed all the way down, I would ask the clerk to make them a part of the record. Okay. Officer Gasson, if you're ready.
I am. Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. Case before the board is 17-800000318. Property in question is 417 Lincoln Avenue. Alfred and Hazel Quarterman are the listed property owners. The violations before the board are for city ordinance 8-40, the duty to maintain private property, 8-52, which are the nuisance prohibitions that go along with 840, and 2503, which are zoning use regulations on residential property. There's a number of exhibits I present to the board. Exhibit number 1 are all the photographs that were taken over the course of time for this case. Exhibit number 2 are all the notices, including the notice violation and notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3 are any of the administrative docs, case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. And exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign that was posted. Initially, this case started in May of this year, May 27th. It was a vacant residential lot being used for the storage of boats, trailers, and other miscellaneous equipment. The lot also needs to be cleared and mowed, edged and trimmed, and any of the trash, there was a number of trash on it, needed to be cleaned up from the lot as well. On May 30th, a notice of violation was mailed first class and certified mail. On June 5th, the certified mail receipt was received by the code office with a signature on it. On June 27th, I conducted a reinspection, noted that it had been partially cleaned up. 3 of the boats and 2 trailers still remain in violation of 852, and at that point in time, we sent a notice of hearing to the property owners. The notice of hearing was mailed out on June 28th, first class and certified mail. On July 6th of 2017, the notice of hearing certified receipt was received by the code office with a signature. On July 10th, the property was posted again by Officer Roki, and I conducted a reinspection yesterday and found at the time that there's 3 boats and 2 trailers still remain on the property. Mr. Quarterman and I unsuccessfully played phone tag. We never had an opportunity to actually get with each other. One of his messages alluded to he's having a difficult time trying to find somebody to take these boats off his property, and we discussed this at the beginning of Code Board. That is his primary hang-up right now, seems to be he can't give the boats away. I mean, he's at the point where he's tried to, and he's been unsuccessful. So at this point, the property's still in violation of 8-52, and the board wants to consider the zoning violation, but I think 852 kind of covers the old inoperable equipment on the property, and then 840 just encompasses the nuisance prohibitions of 852. As is noted, we sent all the notices to the listed property owner via the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collectors Database, and apparently it worked because Mr. Quarterman is here. So I'd just like to have the board consider the violation of 8-52, 2503, and 8-40 are the violations at this point. And I have nothing further at this time.
Mr. Quarterman, do you have any questions for Officer Gasson? Any questions you want to ask him, sir?
Yes, I do. I think what happens here, you say that I'm in violation of an ordinance. And as I remember being in the city of Tarpon Springs, I was born here, and I know the environment quite well. The violations that I'm alleged to have concerning zoning go back to some of the zoning that I'll tell you about, of businesses that I know that's always been in that area for quite a while.
I have to interrupt you just for a moment, Mr. Quarterman. Right now, you're restricted to asking questions. After you finish asking your questions, all right, you will later get an opportunity to present your side of the case. So if you have testimony that you want on the record, we're certainly going to allow you to testify. But right now, this is what they call the interrogatory phase of the procedure. So right now, you're restricted to asking questions. So if you have questions, ask the question, but hold on to your thoughts as far as any testimony or any evidence that you want to present. You'll have an ample opportunity to do that. But right now, you're restricted to asking questions.
I concur with that. I agree with that. I have nothing to ask of the officer at this particular time.
All right. Do any of the board members have any questions for the officer? Apparently not. Now, Mr. Quarterman, I stopped you from asking questions, but now I'm going to ask you to please present your side of the situation.
I ask that you be patient and listen to me very closely.
Go ahead, sir.
My name is Alfred Quarterman. I was born here in Tarpon Springs. I left here at an early age in 1947, and I returned in 1991. Since that time, I became actively involved with Road Cemetery. Speaking about the equipment that you see there, the truck, the trailers, and stuff of that sort, is really that of Road Cemetery. And I use that because that equipment was donated to Road Cemetery because I could not get any help from the city in any manner whatsoever. And as you know now, that Rose Cemetery is a state historical site. Not only that, but for continuous work, it's on the National Register. So that equipment that being complained about is actually equipment used at the Rose Cemetery, which we have a cleanup the second Saturday in every month, weather and other conditions prevailing. So when I look at it and we talk about zoning, I think about places that I've always been there since I was a kid. Started with Miss Mary Snow, who had a snack shop there, a two-story building, and her favorite thing was to sell ices. Across the street from that was what is known as The Rock. It was a place where people sold beer, wine, and often snacks. The same building, you also had a barber shop that was owned at that time by what we known as Barbershop Shorty. And they spoke of him like that because he was a very short man, but he did cut hair. Eventually, it went into the hands of the Dorsets. The Dorsets had kept that for quite a while. The property where you have the maintenance there held a beauty parlor there. On the corner of Lincoln and Lime, you had a pool parlor. On the corner of Satford and Lime, you had a grocery store, which was named the Banner's Grocery. Also on the other side of the street, on the corner of Lincoln and Lime, you had a grocer there named All Britain, who had a baboon as a pet protecting the shop across the street where he kept equipment. So when I look at it and say that we have violations of a trailer and trailers being sit there, which is serving a purpose for this community as well as those who have been lived here and contributed a lot to Top on Springs. I feel that we are being frowned upon. And as far as I know, as long as I own that property, I will allocate that use to be used by Rose Cemetery until my time is up. I hope that this board would consider what is the purpose of that equipment being there, when you also have had equipment there in other cases. As I ride around, I see boats and trailers in other lots around the city, and I trust that they're not in violation. But if they can do it, then why not me? Why am I being singled out? Not saying anything against the officer because he's doing his job. That work that I had to do cost me personally $1,000 for 4 days of work. In addition to that, I had another piece which the officer had not, but I did get a courtesy letter from him referring to a piece that's located on Ross and Oakwood. I had that done at a cost of $500. So in a 2-week period, it cost me a total of $1,500 just to get this equipment moved, trees cut, and everything in the fair, what I've done for it. So if any questions will be asked of me, I will gladly answer them at this time, because I don't want to get hysterical up here. Thank you.
Officer, any questions?
Not for Mr. Quarterman.
Do any of the board members have any questions for Mr. Porter? Go ahead.
You mentioned boats, that the boats were there to do with the cemetery. Why would you need a boat for the cemetery?
The boats are there because this was donated for the purpose of raising funds for the cemetery. But because there were non-running items, I myself had used them to do the repair on, but in the last year I became physically unable to do anything except barely walk around. But I was in concert with the officer there about getting rid of the boats. We have contacted several people. My son there, who has also put it out on eBay or whatever they do with those things, I'm not that familiar with it, trying to sell these boats, give them away. I said that I would give them to anyone who wanted to take them, but they had to take the boat, the trailer, and everything that went with it. And so far, I haven't gotten any responses. nobody wants to bother with them because they can't find a place to put them. And I had tried to get a hold of Officer Gasson to ask if he could be an assistant to me in finding someone who would know what to do with boats that's no longer wanted. I can't just drop it in the street because that would be a violation. And if I can't find anybody to help me get rid of them, then what do? You can't set them afire, you can't put them in the street. I'm stuck with an item that nobody wants.
Yeah. Also, the trailers are, you mean the trailers that you put debris on, Officer Gaston?
There are some utility trailers that have,
Okay.
yeah.
Is
trash
there
and
any
debris.
reason that they couldn't be stored on the cemetery property?
There's no room on cemetery property.
All right.
Does anyone have any further questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
And I think I know the answer, but maybe then this is more of an idea for you. There are charities that you can donate unworking things, cars, boats, things like that too. Have you contacted any of those?
I would appreciate any help if you have any phone numbers or addresses that I can call someone to see if they can comply with that. I would gladly accept it.
I don't have a specific name, but I see things in the paper all the time. Donate your boat, donate your old RV, donate your old car. And I know that it says they don't have to be running. And they'll come and take it away, I believe. So you just need to, look for the right place.
Well, I just have to keep trying.
I have a question for Officer.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
May I ask the officer a question?
Certainly, go ahead.
Officer Gatson, between Oakwood Street and Lime Street on Lincoln Avenue, what is the zoning now? Because at one time, there were 6 businesses in that area.
Right. Right now, the property in question at 417 Lincoln is listed as single-family residential. The only business parcel left is where the ice cream shop is. It's residential business. It's business residential, which is actually, I think, the only parcel in the whole city that's actually zoned as business residential. Otherwise, all of those on the east side of Lincoln, going north from Oakwood, are residential property, single-family. They're not multi-use.
So is the real problem the boats that's on there, or it's the truck or the equipment for the cemetery?
Yes. It's all of the above. It's residential property being used as a storage lot, which is not an acceptable or permitted use. And then you fall under 852, which basically defines all of that, especially the boats, as debris, specifically in the definition in 851, says unusable, inoperable equipment, including boats. So there's 2 separate aspects. There's the aspect that's being used as a storage lot, even by Mr. Quarterman's statements for the cemetery. He's using it as a commercial storage lot for equipment for, I know the cemetery is somewhat of a business, if you will. It's not a residence. So, I mean, the cemetery's not. So they're storing the equipment for the cemetery on a residential property, using it as a storage lot. That's one aspect. That's the aspect under the zoning issue. And then the specific definition under 851, which is debris, which defines inoperable equipment, including boats, is the other aspect. So directly answer your question, it's yes to both. They basically can't be stored in that manner on that property for that particular type of property. If it was commercial property, we wouldn't be here.
May I jump in with that? I will not back away from assisting Rose Cemetery and keeping the equipment there. It's help that's needed, and if you can't get it anywhere else, then what are you supposed to do? But as long as I am the legitimate owner of that property, the truck and the trailer that's utilized for the upkeep of Rose Cemetery will continue to be.
The vehicle, Officer Gatson, the vehicle has plate on it.
I can't go onto the property to see if there's a plate on it. As far as the truck goes, the truck's not an issue.
The truck
pickup
and the
itself
trailer
is
are
not an issue.
registered.
I don't have a violation before the board for an inoperable vehicle of 40.00, which would be the truck. The truck's not an issue. The issue are the boats and utility trailers.
Oh,
And
that's
it's the
what I-
conditional use of the property, correct.
So it seems like, Mr. Quarterman, the boat,
Yeah, the boats are,
The thing is, Mr.
Go ahead.
If the utility trailers didn't have anything in them, then they're okay to be stored on residential property. But as soon as they become used to store equipment, that's where they become a violation. So if the truck and the utility trailers are there and the trailers are empty, it is not a violation of the code. Primarily, your biggest issue right now are the boats.
as I said, with the information that I just received about looking for these volunteer places that would pick the boats up, I will go ahead and try that. Hopefully, we have some success. But as far as the trailer, the truck that's used by Rose Cemetery, I'll have to continue that. I feel that it is deserved by the people who work so diligently in this community to help Tarpon Springs become what it is. And Rose Cemetery, the crime from neglect to being on the National Register, there's a lot been done there, and without a lot of help. But with my conditions have gotten deteriorated where I can hardly walk, I now have a manager who's sitting over there now to take my place and working with the cemetery. So if the cemetery can't have the equipment there to do the work, then where would you go? If it's not wanted there, then where else would you go? But as I said before, as long as I own the property, that will remain.
Can I just, as chairman, I'd like to just, in an attempt to almost mediate the situation. We have the boats seem to be a primary issue and largely not defensible as far as having boats, 3 boats. It clearly is a violation. Can we possibly consider when we eventually have a motion in this case and eventually go on, that we make that basically the primary thing that we want to center on, and not make the issue of the cemetery equipment. I have a feeling that can be worked out. If there's equipment on these trailers, perhaps they, as you've indicated, Officer Gasson, that the trailers themselves, if they didn't have any equipment on them, okay. I just think that you know, we want to do the right thing for Tarpon Springs. That's our purpose, and sometimes we have to consider both sides of an issue. So I'm just pointing out to my fellow board members that certainly Mr. Quarterman's made his position clear. I know that this particular cemetery is of historical importance and has been a part of Tarpon Springs and the history of Tarpon Springs and a big portion of the community of Tarpon Springs for a number of years. What I want to do is I would just advise everybody to be a little bit tolerant. This is my suggestion as far as how we handle this case so that we can resolve it in the best possible way for all concerned. And I would just ask everybody to bear that in mind as you ask your questions and later as you think of the best way to handle the situation. Does anybody have any further questions for Mr. Quarterman? Does anybody have any further questions for Officer Gasson?
I don't have any questions. May I make a comment?
Go ahead. I'm going to allow it. Let's proceed.
Rose Cemetery has been there since the early, middle 1800s, you know. It became more recognizable during December 1917 when the land was it was donated to Rose Cemetery for burial because of the, I guess, conditions that you might say at that time, other requirements for burial at that time. So, and Rose Cemetery has not been cared for like Cycadia. Cicadia is cared for by the city of Tarpon Springs with all of our taxpayers' dollars. Rose Cemetery does not get that because it was donated to the board at that time who organized to accept it. But that was the practice at that time. And take into consideration, that's why there is a Rose Cemetery.
Anything you'd like to add? That,
Well, I just want you to, the board to consider those things. And like you said, I just wanted to go back and let them know that it's been there since the 1800s, the middle 1800s. But it only became more recognizable after the land was deeded to Rose Cemetery in December 1916.
okay, I would just point out, before we ask for any motions, I would just point out that today is a very interesting day in that we had a previous case that was unlike any case that I had seen in front of the board, where we had a possible reason for not getting things resolved was that somebody was holding a gun on someone. Okay, now we have a case that I think also is particularly out of the ordinary, at least in my opinion. So,
Could I
Chairman-
make a closing by chance?
I'd
I'll
like you to,
quickly
yes.
Summarize this.
Chairman, after Officer Gaston's done, do you mind if I make a point of legal clarification?
Why don't you make...
Just for the
okay,
record.
Let's let Officer Gasson make his comment, and I'll certainly look forward to your comment, Counselor.
The property nobody questions is residential property. The city has no position as far as whatever relationship to Rose Cemetery. We're obviously respectful of that, but the issue is there's a violation on residential property. What the purpose of that violation is doesn't mitigate necessarily the circumstances that we're here for. I completely understand those, and those may be able to be dealt with outside of this. A zoning variance is simple to do, but can be handled outside of this. I present that they're zoned residential, it's being used as an unacceptable use, and that there's equipment being stored on that property. I'm completely respectable to the reasons why. It doesn't mitigate the fact that it is occurring. So in closing, my statement is I present before the board that the violation's occurring. I understand all the mitigating circumstances, does not change necessarily that the violation is occurring and Mr. Quarterman is the violator of those ordinances. We can certainly work, if there's a period of time, to mitigate those things through another means and make it an allowable use. Those things are very possible to do. Unfortunately, it's just not the circumstance here to do that. That's my closing statement.
And certainly, Officer, your point is well taken, and I think we all understand your position is to look at the law. I'd now ask the counselor, do you have a statement or anything that you'd like to add that will help us in rendering a decision in this case?
Of course. As far as this kind of goes a little bit with what Officer Gasson said. Officer Gasson here represents the city of Tarpon Springs, and the city of Tarpon Springs has the discretion to bring whatever code violations it chooses to bring. So it's up to the city to work with the property owner on that. The position of this board is just to determine, based on the facts and evidence presented to it today, whether or not such violation existed at the time or if it still exists as of today. So that's the only determination that this board should be making based on the relevant, competent, substantial evidence that's been presented to it.
Well,
Or the relevant evidence,
I
rather.
certainly don't want to argue with you, but if in fact that the violation is proven, then we go to a penalty phase. And the penalty phase determines how much time and what might the daily fee be.
Correct.
So when I was attempting to speak on this subject, I actually was trying to direct it to my fellow board members to make sure that they understand, okay, that is something that in this particular case we might want to consider, okay? We have a historical situation, we have a community situation, okay? There's no question that the officer is doing what he's required to do, and there's no question that when we consider was there a violation or not, we consider only was there a violation. This is what the statute reads, and this is was it violated or not. But then we do have a phase beyond that where we have a certain amount of judgment where we set what the penalty might be if in fact that it's determined that it was proven.
Of
and-
course,
and what the
Chairman.
time limit
I
was.
was just making the clarification because
understand.
we haven't got to the penalty phase yet, so I was unaware that those comments were directed towards the penalty phase. I just wanted to make the clarification.
And I certainly appreciate it. I'm not trying to argue with anybody.
Oh, no, no, no.
I'm trying to actually hopefully come to a resolution that would be the best for everybody involved there. The city of Tarpon Springs, the people that are involved with this cemetery, the city, and what we have to do for our fellow residents. This particular case is, I think, for all of us that have sat here for a number of years, it's unique in my experience, okay? And I haven't ever made this type of a plea before, and I was actually not speaking to deny the officer what he was going to say, or in any kind of argument with what you care to say. But the case being actually pretty clear cut, I was already assuming that we most likely will end up in the penalty phase, and that's where the board members have an opportunity to use a certain amount of discretion.
Of course, I would
Okay.
just be remiss if I didn't.
All right, and I appreciate that. Believe me, I'm not taking sides. My goal here and role here is to be the chairman and give everybody a fair opportunity.
Can the violations be separated? Or is it all one?
Well, let's do this. Let's determine if we have a motion. Is there anybody that cares to make a motion in this case?
I will.
Go ahead then, please.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violation, sections 8-48-52 and 25.03 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was enforcement fact. The respondents were in violation thereof.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any need for discussion? And I hope I didn't intimidate anybody by speaking as much as I have. If anybody has any comment they'd like to make, please go right ahead. Otherwise, we'll ask for a vote. Okay, we've had quite a bit of discussion, but anybody else want to add anything at this time?
About separation, should that be done before or after?
Well, I think that
They're all violations.
I don't know that it's going to do any good to separate the violations. I think that where this case where we may be able to have more input and impact is if we get if there is a violation, we can probably be a little bit more tolerant and considerate when we deal with the second motion, which would come if, in fact, we have a finding of fault. So what I'd ask for is a roll call vote, if we can proceed.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
No.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Mrs. Vacacy?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demasis?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to the penalty phase. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Officer Gasson, but I've been doing this after each case. I'd like, if you would, any recommendation on behalf of the city in this situation?
Yeah, I do believe that there are a special set of circumstances here, and I believe that there's some things that could probably be done to help mitigate it. So for that reason, I'd ask the board for 3 months, and I would probably go with $25 a day. That gives him an opportunity to maybe seek zoning issues, which if the property zoning is changed within that 3 months, or at least that process begins, then effectively he's in compliance. So it satisfies the board. So I think that period of time is probably fair and reasonable and gives him an opportunity to look at getting that parcel, possibly an exception or something.
So just to summarize, if in fact the board were to hear a motion giving Mr. Quarterman 90 days, it's your belief that that would give him an opportunity, hopefully, to have some charity or some organization take the boats out, and in the meantime, take some action with the city to talk about maybe possibly getting it rezoned or a special exception for
Exactly.
the equipment that helps
Yes.
keep a historical and cultural icon.
Yeah, I think the Board of Commissioners would probably be very sympathetic to that, and the Planning and Zoning
Okay.
Board would be as well.
I have to say that I'm encouraged by your advice, and I think we'll all consider that while we determine if there is a motion. Anybody care to make a motion in regards? Go ahead, Mrs. Archer.
I move that the respondent shall have until October 20th to bring the property into compliance with the code sections, it's all three of them, right? 8-40, 8-52, and 25.03, or a fine of $25 per day for each day thereafter. The respondent remains in violation of said code section.
Any second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I just
Go ahead.
want to say that I understand completely about Mr. Quarterman has worked many, many years and very diligently on the Rose Cemetery, and we want to do everything we can to help you with this situation.
Okay, anybody else care to make any comment before we ask for a
Yeah,
roll
I'm
call
gonna-
vote?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna be a little bit of a devil's advocate here, and I appreciate what you have done. Please don't think I'm disrespecting you. But he's very passionate about this particular thing, and we do have people come before this board that we have to order them to do something they don't like, that are just as passionate about it. And it worries me that we're going to say, okay, but we're gonna make an exception here. So getting it rezoned would be a very important thing to do. And I also wonder why the equipment used to do the cemetery couldn't be put in a storage unit. I mean, there are ways to get around this. I mean, the boats, if they can't get the charity to take the boats away, then you call a tow truck and have them drag them to a landfill. I mean, there are ways to get the stuff taken care of. And as I say, I'm not sure. I thought I saw a good trailer that the equipment that works in the cemetery could be put on and put into a storage unit. And, so if the zoning wouldn't come through, that would be an alternative.
Okay, any other comments? Can we get a roll call, or can we get a
Roll call.
roll call vote, please?
Ms. Wade,
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs,
Abstain.
You cannot abstain, you have to make a decision. Because you don't have a conflict of interest, so you need to, under the statute, you have to make the decision whether or not you agree with the motion or disagree with the motion. If you don't have a,
discussion about
we did, and if you don't have a monetary gain from it, then you don't have a conflict of interest.
No.
All right,
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. V. Casey,
Yes.
Ms. Archer,
Yes.
Mr. Demasis.
yes. All right,
Mr. Chairman, could we just do a quick summary, make sure Mr. Quarterman understands and the family understands what?
well,
what we're
I'll
doing?
ask the counselor to explain to Mr. Quarterman so that we're all on the same page.
Mr. Quarterman, this board has found that you were in violation of the 3 code sections. However, they've given you until October 20th of 2017 to remedy the code violations. And if you do not do so by October 20th, 2017, you will suffer a $25 a day fine until such time as you come into compliance with the code. There has been some discussion about possible rezoning for your property and other discussions that you might have with the city in order to come into compliance, but the order from the board is that you have until October 20th to come into compliance with the violations that you have been charged of.
I must say one thing. Thank you very much for your cooperation in this matter. But I cannot feel good about the situation. So I will be taking this forward. Nothing personal against anyone that sits on the board. But understand, I'm sincere about this. whether I get any cooperation from the city or anywhere else, I do have other sources that I can go to. May not be pleasant, but that's the position that you put me in with this vote. So
And
thank you very
certainly, you're
much.
right, Mr. Quarterman. You do what you have to do, but I would suggest that if you make a strong attempt to get rid of the boats and also make a strong attempt to work with the city as far as possibly getting a rezoning or a special exception, that may preclude you from having to go into a more aggressive manner. That's just a suggestion. You do what you have to do, but I strongly would suggest to not only you but your sons that you take advantage. Okay, the son, you take advantage. Okay, you take advantage of the fact that you have 90 days, okay, to hopefully get rid of the boats, okay, hopefully straighten out the situation with the trailers so that everybody can live in peace and harmony, okay, and nobody has to, we don't have to struggle over this. That's my suggestion. But I certainly would not tell you to, you do whatever you have to do, and there's certain rights that you have, as I read out in the instructions, if you're not satisfied with the decision of the board, and none of us are going to take it personal, I assure you.
Thank you.
So I appreciate your efforts, and we've made the best resolution that we felt that we could make. So let's go on to the next case then. It's 17-800000327, okay? VL Lime west of Oakwood, also described as VL Lime / Lincoln. Anybody here for west of Oakwood? Apparently not.
Mr. Chairman, just so you know, the VL is vacant lot.
Vacant lot, okay, well, I
Just a
can
little.
only say that my experience has been 46 years of working on the railroad. We didn't have any vacant lots. Okay, so VL, vacant lot, all right.
Vacant lines, maybe.
This is Riverside.
Riverside.
Pardon me?
Is that the
We
right
on
picture,
8?
Donald?
We're on
Or are we on 9?
case number 8.
It'll be a pile of junk.
Doesn't go with number 8.
Got the wrong exhibits, all right, we'll pause.
We're on 327, the VL west of.
Vacant
Lime.
lot, I know what that
Vacant
stands
lot
for.
On Lime. Yeah, that one's vacation. Stand by. We have the paperwork to check.
That's all right, we need a little rest anyway. It's been a tough day today.
Like we're gonna be here another 2 hours.
Well, Wanda, my role runs out in October, so after that, they'll probably all be real short days here.
Yeah, look at his. Are we ready to go, sir?
That stuff up there all the time.
We have the
Thanks
right
for
pictures
pointing
now?
that out, Wanda. I'll make sure that I do that from this point on. Are we set?
All
We
set.
got the right exhibits? All right then, Officer Gasson, there's no one here for this
That's correct.
vacant lot property. You may proceed.
Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. Case before the board is 17-800000327. Is the vacant lot in the area of Lyman, Lincoln. Parcel number is 13-27-15-64170-000-0110. It's currently owned by the Pinellas County Community Program Land Trust, AKA Community or Bright Community Trust Incorporated. They're also the registered agent. It's a charitable organization in Pinellas County. The violations before the board are a violation of 8-22, accumulation of trash, and 8-52, which are the nuisance prohibitions for debris, again. I presented 4 exhibits for the board, which at the end, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be entered into the record as evidence.
Okay, just let me interrupt you. As the exhibits are passed down to the clerk, if the clerk would please make all of the exhibits a part of the record. Go ahead, officer.
Thank you. Exhibit number 1 are all the photographs, including the initial inspection, sign postings, and the final inspection. Exhibit number 2 are all the notices, including the notice of violation and the notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3 are the administrative documentation, case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. And exhibit number 4 is affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign that was posted. This property, the case started on June 2nd of this year. On my initial inspection, while I was conducting inspections in the area, noticed a large amount of trash and debris that's been dumped on the property. On same date, June 2nd of 2017, the notice of violation was mailed first class and certified mail to the listed property owner. On June 9th of this year, the notice of violation and the certified return receipt was returned to the code office with a signature. I conducted a reinspection of the property on June 28th, noticed there was no change, and at that point in time, we decided to send a notice of hearing for this code board. On June 29th, the notice of hearing was mailed first class certified mail. On July 6th, the notice of hearing return receipt was returned to the office with a signature. On July 10th of this year, the property was posted by Officer Roki. And on July 19th, I conducted a final inspection, and I noted there was no change. The trash and debris still on the property, and I had no contact from the owner regarding this property. I've been in contact with Pinellas Land Trust or Brightway numerous times, but we just never talked about this property. They're dealing with a couple of properties in town right now, so it probably just got lost in the mix. All of the notices were sent to the listed property owner via the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collectors database. And the pictures that are going around were taken back in June and then at the posting, and then I took one more on the 19th, basically showing the ongoing problem of trash being dumped in these areas and unfortunately on their property. So I bring before the board a violation of 8-22 and 8-52. And I have nothing further at this time.
Okay, does anybody on the board have any questions for Officer Gasson? I have a question then. This particular land trust, do they seem to be responsive? You've said you've dealt with them on other situations.
They actually had 2 people here. You know, they had no argument with anything. They're trying. The biggest issue they have is because they're a 501c, everything takes an enormous amount of time and everything has to be bidded out. They get the lowest bidder, and then, like she was explaining to me, a lot of times those bidders, they fall through when they actually go to schedule them. So unfortunately, it's difficult for them. They have probably 20 properties in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, constantly I have little issues, and they're usually very responsive. For some reason, these last 2 have just been causing them a lot of consternation. There's a constant ongoing trash dumping problem that there's not a silver bullet solution for.
So in your opinion, it wouldn't be that they're putting trash on the property, it's others are?
Absolutely not. In this particular pile of trash, somebody reported a day later that they saw somebody dumping it instead of calling the police when it occurred. And that's part of the problem we're having, is we can't catch anybody. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
In view of my own questions, anyone else have any questions for Officer Gass?
You always have to tell them, though, they aren't proactive as far as going over and checking their properties?
They are. The one gentleman that was here, he's the person in charge of landscaping. And they, again, because this is a bigger project, they have to go out to bid. So it takes them time. Landscaping, just mowing, trimming, edging, is all covered. And they're, like I said, they have 20 some odd properties, and I don't really bring an overgrown lot before you guys from Brightway.
Right, I'm concerned that every time somebody dumps trash, are we gonna have
I think
it
it's
before the
administrative that
board?
causes them more of their issues. So,
But this is not a county organization, correct?
no,
It's
it's
just
a
got the
private charitable
word on
organization
it.
that happens
Okay.
to have Pinellas in its name.
Does anybody care to make a motion in this case?
I can do it.
All right.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violation, Section City Code 8-22, City Code 8-52 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondents were in violation thereof.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Apparently no need to discuss. I'd ask the clerk for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergerman?
Yeah.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demosis.
Yes. Okay, that brings us to the penalty phase. Before we do that, though, I would ask you, Officer Gasson, you've indicated that you've had a lot of interaction with this particular entity. Any suggestions or recommendations based on your past experience?
I think they would probably have it rectified within 30 days, and if not, $25 a day to the
All right.
organization, as they are a charitable organization, but
I didn't hear how long.
30 days. And one thing about this case, just to give the board a little more information, the priors that we had on them was in 2011, and they were not the owners of the property.
Oh,
So the time they've owned the property, they've had no violations on that property. And as I stated, they're currently in the process of trying to get bids to clean it up. So it's just a slow process for them.
Can I ask, does anybody care to make a motion in this case?
I'll do that too.
All right.
I move that the respondent shall have until August 25th, to bring the property into compliance with code section 8-22 and 8-52, or suffer a fine of $50 to $25 per day. Thereafter, the respondent remain in violation of said code section.
Any second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any need to discuss this? As I look to both sides of the podium, our table, apparently no one needs to discuss this, so I'll ask the clerk for roll call vote.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergerman?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demosis.
Yes. Okay, that brings us to case 17-8000322-489 Riverside Drive. Anyone here for 489 Riverside Drive? Apparently not. Officer, if you're ready, you may present the
Thank you,
city's
Mr.
position.
Chairman. Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. Case before the board is 17-800000322. Property is at 489 Riverside Drive, and it's owned by Lisa or Jeffrey Jennings. They do live in the city, but they do not reside in this property. The violation before the board is for the conditional or permitted use under single-family residential rentals less than 6 weeks, 25.02. This property is before the board to be established. It's currently in compliance. And actually, the next three, just to make life easy, we did all the established for tourist homes all at one time, so we're in the group. But moving forward, the photographs include a photograph of the property with it being posted, and I have 4 other exhibits, and Mr. Chairman, if those exhibits could be entered into evidence for the record, please.
All right, I'd ask the clerk, as the exhibits are passed forward, when you gather them all up, if you'd make them all a part of the record. Go ahead.
Exhibit number 1 are the photos, which include the sign posting. It's difficult to take pictures of people visiting. Exhibit number 2 are all the notices that were sent, the notice of violation and the notice of hearing was sent to the owner address, and we also did send one to 489 Riverside. Exhibit number 3 are the administrative documentations, case summary, property appraiser, tax collector records, and also the deed transfer to the current owner. Exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign that was posted. This case started out June 1st of this year. I received an email from someone in planning and zoning here at the city advising that the address is zoned R100 and is being used as a vacation home rental for less than 6 weeks at a time. I initially had visited the address on that date and had no contact with anybody. I was able to find an Airbnb listing that clearly allowed me to schedule a stay less than 6 weeks online. And I did send an email at that time through Airbnb to the owner under a pseudonym. I did have contact with the occupants on June 3rd. They are a family from Texas. They advised they rented the property from June 2nd to June 7th. At that point in time, we decided to, and they said they'd schedule it on Airbnb. We sent a notice of violation, mailed first class and certified mail. On June 8th, we received an email from the neighbor. They were reporting a different family was inside of the house as a rental. And it was causing some issues to the neighbors. Kids were jumping over the fences. As a matter of fact, I think one of the neighbors said that one of the kids from the rental were in their pool, even though there's a pool at this house. I conducted a reinspection, and I found that the listing was no longer online at that time. That's generally all I really have. I've gone by a couple of times, haven't seen any other cars there. The conversation I did, actually this one I didn't have any conversation with the owner. But like I said, I put it into compliance based on the fact that I was no longer able to schedule a rental for less than 6 weeks. The interesting thing about the owner of this property, it is not owner residing in this property. They do reside in the city, but they live on I believe it's Graywood, in Rolling Oaks. They also own another property that they purchased strictly for the purpose of rental home property on Merlin's Court. So at this point in time, all I would like to do is have this property established for future violations of City Ordinance 25.02, which is the single-family residential rentals. And in closing, let me finish up my postings. We did send a notice of hearing on July 5th, and on July 10th, Officer Roki posted it again. And I only had very limited contact via email with the owner, and that's where it was told that they needed to take it down for 6 weeks, and they did comply with that. And hence I stated before, at this point, I believe we're in compliance because I haven't seen any other rentals. But moving forward, I'd like to have them established for any potential future violations of 25.02. And I think we established as the last code board the definition, and I do have it, which is contained under 241.00, 213, which is a tourist home. So the ordinance is permitted uses and conditional uses. Tourist home is not a permitted use or a conditional use under 25.02, which affects residential R70 and R100 zone district, and this is R100 zone. So they're basically not allowed to have a tourist home. And that's all I have at this point.
So the city's position is that you'd like to establish this as a violation,
Correct.
but they're presently in compliance.
But they are presently in compliance, yes,
All
sir.
right. Does anybody have any questions for Officer Gaston?
I got just one quick one.
Sure.
Since this is starting to come up with, often, does that mean you guys have to check out, like, at least once a week, all of the ones that have been violated, and so you can see if they're at it again?
I primarily do it based on,
Okay.
primarily, I can tell you right now, I know of about 20 in the city. But we haven't received complaints on them. Some of them may have circumstances that affect things. So until I get a complaint, at that point in time is when we begin to investigate them. I don't troll these.
Okay.
If I get a complaint, I jump online. I have multiple different names that I see if I can rent it out and see if they'll let me. Some of them will not allow me online, but when I email them, they'll say, yeah, sure, we'll do that. So I did not encounter that with this one.
I just wondered if we're following up on it. But that would
I do when
taking a lot of time.
when I get a complaint, and the thing about it is with this one in particular that's before the board right now, I guarantee you I will know about it. There's
and if
no
somebody
doubt in my
complains,
mind
they'll
that I'll know
continue
as
to
soon as somebody
complain, I
shows up
would
there.
think.
So, yeah,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Okay. Can we get a motion in regards to this case?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, sir.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violation, section 25.02 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect at the time of the notice of violation. The respondent were in violation of said code sections, however, they are now in compliance.
Any second? All right, we got a motion and a second. Any need for discussion? Apparently no need to discuss. I would ask the clerk for roll call vote,
Ms.
please.
Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Ms. Vacasie?
Yes.
Ms. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demosas?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to our next case, 17-800000391. And that's 1418 Coburn Drive. Anybody here for Coburn Drive? Apparently not. Officer Gasson, if you're ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. The case before the board is 17-800000391. The address in question is 1418 Coburn Drive. Property owner listed as Rondi Frisch. This is another vacation home rental that I request the board to establish. Ms. Frisch does own or occupy this property, and what she does is she rents out a downstairs apartment periodically, but she lives in the residence as her permanent residence. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to present 4 exhibits to the board, and I'd like for the record those to be entered as evidence after they're presented.
All right, and I'd point out to the clerk as they're passed down, if you'd collect them and make them a permanent part of the record. Go ahead, sir.
Exhibit number 1 are all the photographs, which basically the front of the house with the sign being posted in the yard. Exhibit number 2 are all the notices, the notice of violation and the notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3 are any administrative docs, case summary, property appraiser, tax collector records, and any emails I may have had. Exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign that was posted. On June 27th, this case started out initially. I responded with the police department to a suicidal subject at the house, and they were renting the lower apartment. We asked the circumstances, and she advised, oh, we rented it on Airbnb. So I got online and found out there was an Airbnb rental for this property. I went upstairs, made contact with the owner. She confirmed that she was renting out the lower apartment on a short-term rental basis, less than 6 weeks. At that point in time, that's when the case started. Advised her she was no longer allowed to do that based on our city ordinance, informed her of the ordinance. We did mail her a notice of violation and a notice of hearing, first class and certified mail. And the property was posted by Officer Roque on July 10th. I conducted another inspection, which basically me surfing the web and seeing if I could find any listings that would allow me to schedule it for less than 6 weeks. I also received a phone call from the property owner, Rondi Frisch, who advised she'd taken down her Airbnb listings, which seemed to be the case. All of the notices were sent to the owner of record, according to the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collectors Database. And as I stated, the case before the board would be to simply establish this property for any future violations because it is in compliance at this point in time. And that would be a violation of City Ordinance 25.02, which is single-family residential rental. Her property is zoned single-family residential.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Officer Gasson in regards? Apparently, there are no questions. Does anybody care to make a motion in regards to this case?
I'll do it.
Go ahead, please.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violation, Section 2502 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondent were in violation thereof.
Second.
Okay, are we going to go on and say, however, they're now in compliance? Is that the wording? Is that your intent? Are they in compliance now? You want to add that to your motion?
And they are in compliance now.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, and there was a second, right? Okay, any need to discuss this? If anyone has any comment they'd like to make in regards to this case? Apparently there's no comments. We'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Excuse me, Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergerman?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
And Mr. DeMoss?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to our next case, 17-8000338. It's 787 Merlin's Court. Anyone here for that case? Apparently not. Officer Gasson, if you're ready, you may proceed.
I am Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement Division. The property or the case before the board is case number 17-8000338. Property address is 787 Merlin's Court. Property owner and resident is Susan Parker. I bring before the board another case to be established for a violation of City Code 25.02, vacation home rental and conditional or permitted uses. I'm going to present before the board 5 exhibits. I had to change that up. That I'd like to be put into evidence for the record, please.
All right, and I'd like to ask the clerk that as these exhibits are passed down, if they'd be collected and made a permanent part of the record. Go ahead, sir.
Moving forward, exhibit number 1 are all the photographs, which include the sign posting, because again, I have no photographs of people staying there. Exhibit number 2 is a copy of the ad for rental on the website. I believe it was Airbnb. Exhibit number 3 are all of my notices, notice of violation, notice of hearing. Exhibit number 4, the administrative docs, case summary, property appraiser, tax collector, and official emails, officer emails. The affidavit of posting and the copy of the sign is exhibit number 5. This case started out on June 27th, based on a neighbor complaint about people renting out the property. As I stated, I included the Airbnb listing in the link, and I was able to schedule a rental for less than 6 weeks on the property. Property is zoned single-family residential. I believe it's R70, which falls under 2502 as the conditional permitted uses. Tourist home is not one of them. I actually went by the property and I made contact with Susan, who is Susan Parker, and she lives there. She periodically rents her property out and stays at her boyfriend's house while other people are staying at her house. I advised her of the law, and she stated she would be taking down or modifying her online listings for her property, which she has. On July 5th, I had the conversation with her on the 27th. On July 5th, we sent the notice of violation and the notice of hearing via certified mail and first-class mail. On July 10th, the property was posted by Officer Roki. And then on July 19th, yesterday, I did some web surfing and couldn't find a listing for the property any longer. Actually, I did find a listing, but I was unable to schedule it for less than 6 weeks. It was basically 2 months was the minimum amount of time I could list it for. And as I stated, I did have contact with the owner. She was very respectful and understands the situation. Interestingly enough, just for the board, the other property that I first started out with, 489 Riverside Drive, that property owner happens to be the property, they own the property next door that they bought specifically for vacation home rental. So it's 2 places right next door to each other. The neighbors are very, very cognizant of both of these addresses and frequently call when there's people staying there. All the notices were mailed to the property owner based on the Pinellas County Tax Collector and Property Appraisers database. And as I stated, I'd like for this case to also be considered to be established for a violation of City Ordinance 25.02, which is the conditional or permitted use, and tourist home not being included as one of those uses for an R70 zoned home.
Does anyone have any questions for Officer Gaston in regards to this case?
Thank you.
There being no,
And I'll do better this time.
okay, if you'd like to make a motion, go right ahead.
I move, based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in the law, that at the time of the alleged violation, Section 25.02 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and in effect. The respondents were in violation thereof. They are currently in compliance.
Right. Any second?
Second.
That was a letter perfect motion, by the way. All right, any discussion? Apparently no need for discussion. I'd ask the clerk for roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergerman?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demosas?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to the 12th case on the docket. It's 17-80000000333 Cross Street at Hope Street. Anyone here for that particular piece of property? Apparently not. Officer Gaston, if you're ready, you may proceed.
Thank you. Officer Steve Gaston, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. Case before the board is 17-800000333. This is what used to be known as the old Kokuris Park at Hope and Cross. It would be on the southeast corner of Hope and Cross, directly across the street from what we used to call the old Flop House, 601 East Hope Street.
Across the street from what?
Used to call it the old Flop House. It was the old Greek Church Rec Center. So its nickname was the Flop House. Anybody who's been around long enough probably knows it as the Flop House. So this is the what used to be the old park. The parcel number is 12-27-15-41166-000-00010. The violations before the board are 8-22, accumulation of trash, 8-40, the duty of maintain private property, and 8-52, which are the nuisance prohibitions under 8-40. Mr. Chairman, I present 4 exhibits for the board. I'd like to be those considered to be put into evidence for the record, please.
All right, and those items, I would ask the clerk to collect as they're passed down and make them a part of the record. You may proceed.
Thank you. Exhibit number 1 are including all the photographs, both a large number of them that were taken on June 28th, some taken on July 10th, and July 19th. Exhibit number 2 are all the notices, the notice of violation and notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3, the administrative documents, including the tax appraiser and tax collector's records. Exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign that was posted. On June 28th was my initial inspection, based on a citizen complaint. The lot is overgrown, especially along the eastern side. There are trees overhanging the roadway on the north and the south side. There's trash on the property. And at this point in time, we sent on June 29th the notice of violation and the notice of hearing, because my intent was to have this property established regardless of its compliance state due to the number of priors I've had on it. So on July 5th, the notice of violation and notice of hearing, certified receipts were received in the office with signatures. July 10th, the sign was posted by Officer Roki. On July 17th, we've had quite a few conversations via phone with the property owner's husband. It's listed as Stamatina Sagonios, Sagonias.
I'm a Greek, and that's as close as I could get to it also, so.
So, and we spoke to the husband. He's been out there working on it. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with him today about noon, and he says he's all done. I haven't had an opportunity to go out there and check, but this is another case that regardless of its compliance status, I'd like it to be established by the board anyway. So if it's found, it's established automatically. On the 19th, when I did my final inspection yesterday, they'd mowed the inside, cleaned up the trash, but he completely forgot about the edges. So the right-of-way along the southern side, which is on Roosevelt, was still grossly overgrown. Along the eastern fence line, where the residents are, was still grossly overgrown. And in between all the pilings, needed to be trimmed. He assured me that he had all of that done today, but again, as I stated, I haven't had an opportunity to go out and inspect it. It sounds like I can probably go out there after tomorrow. I'm not going today, and it should be in compliance. All of the notices were mailed via certified mail to the property owner listed via the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collectors Database. And as I stated, at this time, I'd like the board, I think, did we take off 8-22? Because even on my reinspection, to be honest, Mr. Chairman, I would like the board only to consider 840 and 852 because he is in compliance of 8-22. My apologies. That just occurred yesterday. All the trash was kind of picked up. So basically, I'd only like the board to consider violation of 8-40, the duty to maintain private property, and the nuisance prohibitions, which deal with lot clearing, grass mowing, and such. And that's all I have at this time.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Officer Gaston? Apparently, there's no questions. At this time, I consider a motion in regards to the 2 city codes that are still under consideration. Anybody care to make a motion?
Yeah, I will. This is a violation.
He's not in compliance at this point, so it's a violation.
This would be just a violation.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violations, sections 8-40 and 8-52 of the Code of Ordinance of the City of Tarpon Springs were in force and effect. The respondent was in violation thereof.
Any second?
Second.
Any need for discussion in regards to this case?
Sorry, who was the second? I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Ms. Wade.
Ms.
Thank
Wade?
you.
Any discussion in regards to this case? Before I, okay, I guess we can move for a roll call vote then.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergerman?
Yes.
Ms. V. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demasis?
Yes. Okay, that moves us to the penalty phase. Before we do that, I would ask Officer Gaston, you've indicated that you've had a lot of contact with this particular, the owner's husband, and a lot has been done. Can you give us your best appraisal or opinion as far as a suggested penalty?
As far as a suggested penalty, I believe he'll have it all done, so I would say if the board gave him 2 weeks and $25 a day, but I believe that when I check it tomorrow, it should be in compliance.
All right. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Officer Gasson? If not, I would entertain a motion. Anybody care to make a motion in this case?
I move that the respondent shall have until August 10th to bring the property into compliance with Code Section 8-40 and 8-52, or suffer a fine of $25 per day for each day thereafter the respondents remain in violation of said code sections.
Any second?
Second.
Okay, any need to discuss this? Apparently, there's no need to discuss it. I would ask the clerk for a roll call vote, please.
Wade,
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. Casey,
Yes.
Mrs. Archer,
Yes.
Mr. Demasis.
Yes. Okay, that brings us to the penalty phase.
We just did that.
Number 13.
We're on number 13.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're on case number 13. I stand corrected. It's been a long day. Okay, case number 13, 17-800000386. That's 456 East Cypress Street. Apparently, there's no one here for East Cypress Street. Officer Gasson, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The case before the board, well, actually, I'm Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs, Code Enforcement. Case before the board is 17-800000386. Property address in question, 456 East Cypress Street. The listed owner is Paul or Elaine Hobbs. Case before the board is to be established. It's currently in compliance at this time. I have 4 exhibits I'd like the board to consider as evidence.
All right, and when those exhibits work their way down to the clerk, if you'd please add them to the, collectively to the record. You may proceed.
Thank you. Exhibit number 1 are all the photographs, including the initial inspection and the posting of the sign. Exhibit number 2 are all of my notices, my notice of violation, my notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3 are administrative documents, including the case summary, the property appraiser, and tax collector's records. Exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. The case before the board has 4 city code violations, 8-16, which deal with the pre-collection practices or how you store your trash cans and when they can be out and so on and so forth. Also 8-22, which is the accumulation of trash, 8-40, the duty to maintain private property, and 8-52, the nuisance prohibitions that go along with that, which include storing of trash and debris on your property. Case started on June 27th of this year. From a neighbor complaint, there was a large amount of garbage in the front yard, tree debris, furniture, construction debris, and the trash cans were thrown over the fence in public view. There's a short 3-foot fence, as you can see in the photographs, in the front yard, and the trash cans were basically just tossed over that fence. On June 27th, I mailed a notice of violation and a notice of hearing because I had the intent to establish this case due to some prior violations with the property. On July 5th, the notice of violation and notice of hearing certified receipts were returned to the code office with signatures. On July 7th, I conducted a reinspection, and the property was in compliance at that time. On July 10th, Officer Roki posted the notice of hearing sign in the yard, and I didn't conduct another inspection because it was already in compliance on the previous one. The contact with the owner basically consisted of when they notified us that it was time for a reinspection. Other than that, I hadn't had any other contact with the owner, but they are in compliance. All the notices were mailed via to the listed property owner via the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collectors database. And Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd just like the board to establish the property for violation of 8-16, 8-22, 8-40, and 8-52.
All right, do it. Any of the board members have questions for Officer Gasson? Apparently, there's no questions for Officer Gasson. Does anybody care to make a motion to establish in this particular case?
I will.
All right, you may proceed, please.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violation, sections 8-16, 8-22, 8-40, and 8-52 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondents were in violation thereof, but are now in compliance.
Any second?
Second.
Any discussion? Apparently no need for any discussion. I'd ask the clerk for roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Andemasas?
Yes. That brings us to our next case. It's 17-800000368, 601 Sugar Mill Road. Anybody here for Sugar Mill Road? Apparently not. Officer Gasson, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. The case before the board, 17-800000368. The address in question is 601 Sugar Mill Road. The listed owner is Gina Crocetti. This is a repeat violator, and hopefully we got all the paperwork right this time, because it does include an affidavit of prosecution costs at the end, so we'll see if we get it right this time.
I could not hear that.
This is a repeat violator case that's currently not in compliance. The original case that made this case a repeat violator case is 15-479. She did bring the property into compliance on that date, which was October 15th of 2015. This board accepted the affidavit of compliance on Friday, February 3rd of 2017. She was out of compliance for a period of time and currently owes the city $47,000 in fines. So moving forward with this case, Mr. Chairman, is violation of City Codes 840 and 852, which are the same ones on the previous case, which established her as a repeat violator. I have 5 exhibits, the 5th one being the affidavit of prosecution costs that I'd like the board to consider as evidence and placed on the record.
Okay. As those exhibits come forward, I would ask the clerk to make them a part of the record. You may proceed.
Thank you. June 24th of this year was my initial inspection. I noted the lot was overgrown front and rear. We sent her a notice of violation and a notice of hearing. We sent the notice of a repeat violator at that point in time via first-class mail on June 27th. Property was posted by Officer Roki on July 10th, and on July 19th, I conducted another inspection. The property is still not in compliance. The property is still overgrown. I've had no contact from the owner, and we have not gotten back any of the signed certified mail acknowledging the violation. But it is an owner-occupied house, so it's not a vacant residence. She actually does live there. In the previous cases, I've had conversations with her, and I've seen her cars come and go, so I'm pretty confident she's still there. All the notices were mailed to the Pinellas County, or were mailed to the property owner based on the Pinellas County tax collector and property appraiser's database. So before the board, I'd like them to once again establish, or not establish her, but show that she's a repeat violator and accept my affidavit of prosecution costs currently of $116.50. For the board's record, she was previously fined $100 per day for the exact same violations back in 2015. So based on the board's recommendation and mine, I would probably recommend at least that, if not more. And that's my case that I present to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Officer Gass?
You said they owed Shields several thousands of dollars at this time?
Approximately 47,000, that's correct. She did come into compliance 2 years later.
What happens if they continue not to pay them?
Eventually, City of Tarpon Springs owns a new
I
house.
need you to speak up nice and loud so people at the other end can hear you.
Eventually, the city ultimately can foreclose on the property. Or we go and abate it, but that doesn't negate the fines. That just stops the fines for that particular case at that particular time.
He owes this money, and it keeps
Yeah,
building up.
there's
and
methods
she's
that the
still
city
living
deals
there.
with that outside of here, which we'll be exploring next month, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? I do, as the chairman, I want to make sure procedurally that we have a full understanding. So we're looking at this case as we do most of our cases, whether there's a violation or not.
Correct.
All right. And then we also, if in fact the violation is established, and that's an assumption, but if in fact it's established, you already have a built-in prosecution cost of $116?
Yes, that's up to this point for what we've done on this case.
Okay, and if in fact the case is is declared as being proven, and we did go to a penalty phase, we would then establish a date when they would have to come into compliance
Well,
and a potential penalty then?
no. The date, they have to notify me when they're in compliance. The board just basically, June 24th is when I observed the violation. Whatever fines this board dictates began on June 24th because she is a repeat violator.
I see.
If the board in fact finds there's a violation.
I see. So we're just
And
gonna
probably taking
determine
away
whether or not
council's,
there is a violation, and this is what the costs are up to this point.
Correct.
All
And,
right.
and I just informed the board on the previous case, she was fined by this board $100 a day, just for the board's edification of the previous fine.
Okay, and that's the fine that would come into play, is that correct?
It's up to the board, up to $500 per day, because she is a repeat violator. So the previous one was 100, but this
Okay, well,
board
that
can
was,
decide
I guess
500.
maybe I didn't ask my question correctly.
Okay.
We're going to, one, determine if in fact there is a violation. All right?
I'm going to refer you to council because I
Yeah,
think she's got something to say.
The motion for repeat violations with a fine for not in compliance, since she's already established that she's been in violation, since this is a repeat offender, the motion includes your determination of whether they're in violation and what the fine should be plus the administrative cost.
All right, so it's a repeat violation with a fine not in compliance.
Correct.
All right, then. Thank you very much. I've been a long day, and we've had a couple of unusual cases. I just want to make sure I'm on firm footing before we proceed. Does anybody have any questions for Officer Gasson?
June 21st was the date.
24th, June 24th
24th.
was the initial inspection of this year.
Okay, and considering that there doesn't appear to be any further questions, considering that we're looking for a motion for repeat violation with a fine, and they're not in compliance, does anybody care to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Go ahead, sir.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented, and law that Gina Cressidi was in violation of sections 8-40 and 8-52 of the Tarpon Springs City Code from June 24th until such time the property is brought into compliance and the fine of $125 a day be imposed until compliance met. In addition, I move the city be awarded $116.50 for costs that's incurred in prosecuting the case.
I think it was $116.
$116.50. What's on here?
Oh, okay. I'm looking at the pink sheet. It says $116 even. So, officer, which is it?
116.50 is the prosecution
Very good.
affidavit
Okay.
that I
White
signed.
paper that we have.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Wanda. I appreciate it. $116.50.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Anybody care to discuss this? Any discussion? Apparently, there's no discussion. Let's have a roll call
Ms.
vote.
Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you, sorry. Mr. Bergerman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaquesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demasis?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to our 15th case on the docket, 17-800000390. It's 425 Wayfarer Court. Anybody here for that piece of property? Apparently not. Officer Gasson, you may proceed.
Thank you, Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. The case before the board is a repeat violator case similar to the last one. Case number 17-800000390. Property address in question, 425 Wayfarer Court. The property owners are Anna Nocius or Maria Papathanosius. This is a violation of City Code 8-40. This also has 5 exhibits, Mr. Chairman. I'd like the board to place into evidence for the record.
All right, and I point out to the clerk, as those exhibits are passed down, if you'd gather them up and make them a part of the record. Thank you. Go ahead, officer.
Thank you. Exhibit number 1 are all the photographs for the property. Exhibit number 2 are all the notices and the notice of hearing for the repeat violator. Exhibit number 3 are the administrative documentation. Exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting. And exhibit number 5 is an affidavit of prosecution cost in the amount of $76.50. Initially, this repeat violator, I received a call on June 27th and found the property to be in violation on June 27th of City Ordinance 8-40, which is the lot is overgrown. They became a repeat violator in 2016 under 2016 case 16-800000169 on August 19th of 2016. Basically, the property, the front and rear yard need to be mowed and maintained, and this came in from a neighbor complaint. On July 6th of 2017, the notice of hearing for a repeat violator was mailed first class and certified mail to the New Jersey and Tarpon Springs address, the residence address up in New Jersey. On July 10th, the property was posted. I conducted my final inspection on July 19th and saw that the property is still in violation as of this date, or as of yesterday's date, and we have received no communication with the owner or any of the certified documents returned to the office. All the notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector Database. And for the board's information, the previous case, which was heard by this board on August 18th of 2016 for violation 8-40, the board recommended a fine of $50 for each day the violation continued. And I believe on that case, they came into compliance just before the code board's deadline date. And that's all I have at this time, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Do any of the board members have questions for Officer Gasson? No question. I have a question. Any opinion, having dealt with these people in the past, any opinion as to the likelihood of them coming into compliance?
Well, they have from 2009, 2010, 2 in 2011, 1 in 2012, 1 in 2013, the 2016 case. From what the neighbors say, as soon as they leave town, they don't touch their yard, and when they come back, they mow it. So last year we established them, and here we are again, predictably, a year later.
Okay.
So maybe this will entice
your
them to
insight.
take
Anyone
care of
have
their
any further questions for Officer Gasson? If not, does anybody care to make a motion in regards to this case?
I will.
Go ahead, please.
I move that based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented, and law, that Athanasios and Maria Papathanasios was in violation of Section 8-40 of the Tarpon Springs City Code from June 27th until such time,
And that's 2017, right?
2017, until such time the property is brought into compliance, and a fine of $125 per day shall be imposed until compliance is met. In addition, I move that the city be awarded $76.50 for the costs it incurred in prosecuting the case.
Any second?
Second.
Any discussion required in this case? Apparently, there's no need for discussion. I'd ask the clerk for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaquesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. Demasis?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to affidavits of non-compliance. Case number 17-800000072, 705 South Distant Avenue. Anybody here for that address? Apparently not.
No paperwork on that.
Any discussion in regards to, or, excuse me, officer, any position that the city wants to present?
No, it's just not compliant.
Okay.
Just this one, these two, we do have affidavits prosecution costs on. We finally got our paperwork straight, but that's a separate motion.
Okay, anybody care to make a motion in regards to this affidavit of noncompliance?
Yeah, if I have the right motion here. I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in the law that the respondents failed to comply with this board's order within the prescribed time and to award the city $178 for the cost incurred in prosecuting this case.
Okay, any second?
Second.
Any need for discussion? Then we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think he did the motion to accept the affidavit, and did we not do the motion yet to
That's what I was
accept
wondering.
the
I couldn't
affidavit as
find it on here.
non-compliant?
This,
This is
This
both.
he read the motion
We're
for,
doing them together?
yeah,
Okay,
acceptance
okay.
of affidavit of non-compliance with the
Still new,
fine
the whole
attached.
affidavit of
Yep.
prosecution. Okay, thanks.
Okay, are we out of order here? Or?
No, so we have a motion and a second, so we are good to move
We're
forward.
good to move forward. Okay, I like that.
Moving on.
All right, then. Any need to discuss this? If not, we'll take a roll call vote.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs, excuse me, so sorry. Apologize. Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. DeMatteis?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to case number 17 on our docket. And, that is 17-800000148. It's 322 East Lime Street. Anyone here for East Lime Street? Apparently not. Officer Gasson, you may proceed.
It's an affidavit of noncompliance with an affidavit of prosecution costs in the amount of $236.
Any need for discussion? Anybody care to make a motion?
I will. I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in law that the respondents failed to timely comply with the board's prior order within the time prescribed, and to award the city $236 for the costs incurred in the prosecuting of this case.
Any second?
Second.
Any need for discussion? Apparently not. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Wade?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. Archer?
Yes.
Mr. DeMatteis?
Yes. Okay, that takes us to affidavits of compliance. I don't see any listed. And affidavits to be provided, I don't see any listed. Old business. I know of no old business unless anybody on the board has any old business. Okay, there's no approval of minutes. Any public comments? Apparently, there's very little, if any, public present at the time. Board and staff comments. Anybody care to say anything? Okay, apparently no board or staff comments. Let the record indicate that the time is 4:40 p.m. And before I adjourn, I'd like to, one, thank everybody for their patience. We started a little bit late. I also would point out we had a couple of cases that were out of the ordinary today, and I appreciate everybody's input. And I think that we showed today that we could work together for the betterment of Tarpon Springs. So we did just what we're supposed to do, and I appreciate it. Let the record indicate the time is 4:41 p.m. and we're adjourned. All right. Can't wait for you to take over, kid.
Forget that.
I did.
I will.
I was actually in the car when I was stopped at a red light, and I was like, okay, gotta say thank you. Thanks. I was like, Jen, you need to call Gasson.
I was like, okay.
Got you. I know. Well, it's better to send it to her because she's gonna have it. One of our clerks go ahead and just run it over to the judge. It took 4 judges, duty judges, to find someone who would actually sign the inspection warrant.